Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of AV Educates AV Tech Talks. I want to thank you for being here so much with us on the AV Tech Talks panel and on Facebook and everywhere else that you're watching us. So let's go into some of these house rules. We go live to Facebook every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get notifications by when we go live by following the AV Educate page on Facebook. And while you're at it, join the AV Educate group. We'll drop the link in the comments. If you want to join the Zoom room by texting 407-504-7690. Again, that number is 407-504-7690. This number is only used for our panelists, and you won't receive any spam texts from this number, but you will receive weekly invites to the Zoom room. We're opening the rooms at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and we close the doors at 6:55. But keep in mind, panelists have to participate and have to keep their cameras on during the talk. Moving forward, due to the nature of streaming, there's a bit of a delay between when we say in our Zoom room and when it hits Facebook. So when making comments or asking questions, please provide some context. The user interface becomes more sleek, and this will lead to more meaningful engagement. Now, be the sharpshooter in the room. No questions are too basic. AV Educate's mission is to help through knowledge. People move from stagehand to technician. Chances are that others have the same questions you do, so please ask away. At the same time, we welcome comments and input on the topic at hand. So don't hold back that great topic or that correction when one of us says something inaccurate. Now, we don't know everything. We are human. We don't claim to know everything. We may discuss or show the way we do something, and it doesn't mean it's the only way, but it's the way we found that works for one of us. If you have another way that's easier or yields better results, please share that with everybody. The whole session is a live Q&A. Our questions will be discussed, the topics for about an hour, and then we'll move to more about a round table discussion. There's no formal Q&A section. Again, the whole session is a live Q&A, so don't wait until the end to ask your questions or to make your comments. And finally, a shameless plug. Please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram so we can grow bigger and collaborate with even more amazing people just like you. That's all I got, guys. Back to the main room, back to Zoom, and back to you all in Facebook land. Again, thank you for being here, thank you for watching, and thanks for sharing.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to AV Tech Talks. We've got a large panel today. We're doing something a little bit different. We are doing an open forum, so we don't have a set demo like we normally do today, but we're going to take your questions. We're going to just talk about things that are related to AV. So we've got a lot of people.
Bad echo on Facebook, by the way.
Bad echo on Facebook?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's just for Ed Talks or is it everybody?
We'll find out in a second.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too now.
Yeah, everybody.
Oh, that's so weird. That is super strange. Let me mute my mic and just see, Omar, I'm going to mute
everybody.
Yeah, no, it's everybody, because when Bodhi talks, it's the same thing. So either Facebook land or something with the streaming side. We were going to do a choir song tonight, everybody, just so you know, so we still have the chorus effect on.
Is Andrew still messing with your mixer over there?
I hope not. Sorry, let me just see if there's any audio filters in OBS. I would never use that filter from what I'm hearing. No, I don't even have anything on it. That's an interesting...
You would think after 16 shows.
19.
So 19? Really? Oh, see, I don't know what's going on anymore. I just show up now. I literally do whatever Ed tells me to do.
Yeah, sorry. Let's see if we can figure this out.
Roland's trying to give you tech advice, and Scott has his hand up. I think people are trying to help you troubleshoot.
Yeah, no, everybody's telling me it's Jeff's fault.
Says they think you have it mixed into the Facebook restream as well as Zoom audio.
Yeah, this is...
Even on Facebook, they're saying Jeff breaks it. Get Jeff out the stream. Everything he touches breaks.
Oh, Roland. Sorry, I thought you were being helpful.
Well, I guess this is the topic tonight.
It's not the first time I've been told that.
Sadly, there's a 20-second delay, so I gotta see if the thing I just changed fixed it or not.
So interesting enough, we could do a topic about the Internet of Things and audio, since I recently ran into a problem that I could talk about. This is perfect for it.
All right, Ed, can you do a screen share and let's pick it apart?
Sure. Let's
Perfect.
let's see if we can do it.
Good place to start.
So let's go to. All right.
Oh, there's your problem.
That I'm using OBS. Yeah. So I mean, I'm looking at my properties. I'm using my headphones. This is probably super boring for everybody.
No, this is good. This is troubleshooting.
And
Today's
let's go to my
Tech
gallery.
Talk, we're going to troubleshoot audio.
Right now we're looking at a screen share, so let's go to this. And yeah, I'm using Zoom audio.
Is Bodhi restreaming it?
No.
No, we're not restreaming.
No, he's pushing everything out. All I do is I bring it up, I bring the live side up, give him all the servers, and look for it to be live to go live. Other than that, he controls everything on his end.
Okay.
But let me see. If
Did you update your Mac? Oh no, you're on an Asus.
Hold on.
Uh-oh, I lost it. So I had a similar problem with OBS recently.
Right. So I don't know if you guys can see my. No, stop that. Let me take this off of that. I'll go there. No. So well, again, I'm kind of monitoring both right now, the Facebook and the other thing. Facebook isn't even seeing my screen share. It doesn't look like.
No, we're black on Facebook.
That's
The guys are having a good time. This is the first topic.
That's so weird.
Reverb and echo.
This is so strange.
Could be a Facebook thing, could be a Zoom thing, could be OBS. So now,
Well,
this is the signal flow, right? Now we're talking about signal flow in the virtual world.
Yeah. Well, and also, I guess we have attendees who can maybe tell us if they're hearing an echo. Nope. Because I'm monitoring. I have another computer.
None of us are echoing here. It's whatever's going out to Facebook is driving an echo.
Right.
So is there something, Bodhi, you can see on Facebook's side that I have no idea?
So I muted it and unmuted it. I think it's just an OBS thing because OBS loves to be fun and difficult.
Right, so now we've lost.
But now we don't have video going out to Facebook at all,
Correct.
even though I'm not screen sharing anymore.
Huh.
Yeah, but what scene are you on?
I don't know. Oh, what happened there? Let's see. That's weird.
Yeah,
So
we're on. Everybody's got an echo.
Oh, my gallery view lost its.
There we go. I can see you on Facebook now.
Yep.
So what was that solve for the video?
Well, for the video, because when I went to screen share, it dumped that window capture. So I had to recapture it, so now I have my gallery view back. Because I keep gallery view on the first screen. This was something I wanted to do anyway. I was going to kind of show like a behind the scenes tonight of how I do this. Sadly, I wasn't expecting to have audio issues. Now, am I feeding anything? No.
It's not ideal, but it's audible if we want to kind of at least get going. And we can continue working on that.
Oh, it doesn't sound audible for me.
And any chance you're actually watching the Facebook on your same computer? Do you have that?
On which same computer? Not the encoder machine. I'm watching
Same
it.
computer that you're running the stream from.
No,
Because
I'm
if you
not.
have it in the background, it's going to cause you.
I don't. But well, and I'm not using a. I'm also not doing desktop audio. I don't know if you guys saw when I had OBS up. I have a separate audio input capture for Zoom audio, but yeah, this is definitely.
Are you bringing the hardware, the Zoom audio in via hardware, or is it coming off of NDI?
It's coming off NVIDIA. It's coming off. That's actually a good point.
Ooh, is it an NDI thing? Is the NDI audio problems back? Is that what we're talking about?
Or you
I'm not,
clicked
no,
to
I'm not
jump
using I'm not using NDI.
Okay.
What about the encoder?
Echo is back on Zoom. Somebody said, so there's an echo on Zoom. I don't hear any echo from anybody's mics on Zoom.
Yeah. There we go. Sorry if you had silence there for a second. I changed the audio input source. Let's see if that fixed anything. Again, there's a slight delay, so they may.
I've got it up. Listen.
Okay, hey, 1, 2. No. What the heck is going on here? I have no idea then.
So as a panelist, are the panelists hearing echoes? As Roland says, sure, I meant via Zoom, not now. So he's not hearing any echoes now.
Well,
We were here.
I only heard an echo when one of you had your mic open while listening to Facebook. That wasn't the same thing.
can we do this? I'm going to do something here first.
One thing I might add is that echo it's probably like 250 milliseconds or less. So it may not be like a round trip, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Round trip.
All right.
Yeah, so I'm gonna.
That's a good point. Let's
I'm gonna
everybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute all.
Everybody and start with Ed on.
Yeah, I just did that. I just muted everybody. So it'll take again 20 seconds before it catches up, but we will see what's happening. So I'm waiting for Facebook to catch up, and this is the beauty of live streaming. I hope this is a lesson for all of our Facebook audiences. If they've been doing any live streaming and having issues, this is what happens.
You're still echoing.
Yeah, it's still echoing. I hear that.
So I think it's safe to say in Zoom here, just for everybody watching who isn't in here, everybody in here agrees that it sounds clear. Facebook is the echo side, so we've determined signal flow wise, right? Zoom is good at some level. Facebook is not. And the only thing we're interfacing through apparently is OBS.
How do you have it linked to your OBS, Ed?
Say that again. As far as what?
Sound audio. How is the audio getting to OBS?
What's that? Yeah, I don't know why we couldn't see the screen share. That's. So it's taking my headphones as the device for the audio input capture, and then my output is set for headphones in Zoom. So that Zoom is, because Zoom can tell it what to do. Now, what's my default?
So you shouldn't be taking an audio input.
Oh,
You should be grabbing an output. Yeah, because the input will cause echo. Trainer, I did understand the idea of staying muted. Let them know that the echo didn't clear their smarty pants. Calm yourself over there.
So, sorry. My 4K monitor is super great for doing these window captures. It's not super great for trying to read anything.
I told you not to get the 4K one.
Or at least if you do set.
So, yep, Facebook just lost audio. I brought audio back in.
You want to delete that OBS input and just re-put it like exit out, put it back in?
Yeah, I guess so.
Always do a test stream. We've done 16 of these. I think we should have had this done by now.
All right, so let's
Bring on the NDI to Dante Bridge and make it even more fun.
Yeah, somehow it's getting a parallel feed trainer. That's exactly what's happening. We just have to figure out where it's coming from.
Well, we pretty much figured that out. It was coming from Ed, right? It's all his fault.
It's all my fault, absolutely. Again, my gear went out on a job this week, and that's what happens when I finish partway through the day today and then set it all up again.
Open up your sound settings and see what everything's routed through.
I have them open, and I'm looking. There's nothing that...
So, Ed, just talk us through it. So this Zoom is going through what to get to OBS?
So I have my output settings of Zoom set to be headphones. And I have a set of headphones plugged in. And then I am taking an audio output capture from headphones. So it's only getting what it's getting from the headphones.
So you're going straight from Zoom to OBS, direct?
Pretty much, yeah. It should be. There shouldn't be anything else.
Okay, so then within OBS, when you right-click on the advanced settings, all the monitor and output was off, correct?
It is monitor and output. That is correct. That's what it should be.
No, so turn off the monitor output. So it's muted internally, but only sends out.
Try that. So let's see if we get Facebook back.
All right, so the issue I had was that in a church install I did to go help fix something, they had a brand new MacBook Pro 2020.
Hold on, wait. Yeah, well, we'll see if we're back. Yep. Great, we're back. Perfect.
All right, so I'll finish the story. Sorry. So I gotta lower this volume over here. I went to a church to do a fix with a friend of mine who called me in because he needed help with the video side. And they had a brand new MacBook 2020, and the MacBook was going to go streaming to Facebook. And what they had bought, which is not the Blackmagic Web Presenter, which is what I prefer, they had bought that little $100 Blackmagic 3G recording studio, which still kind of works within OBS, but there's a problem with the audio. It was very choppy. It came in like just choppy. It was like the entire way through. I spent 2 hours troubleshooting it, going through the forums. Finally called somebody at Blackmagic that I have talked to before. And the problem is that the newer software, the 11.6 with the newer Mac software isn't compatible with the OBS software. So I had to backdate to 11.5 in order to get to work correctly, which I tested it on my computer because mine's is an older 2020 from the beginning of the year, not from this month. The downside was that, which Ed had given me an idea after the fact, which is I already had the client buy something different. The downside was I couldn't backdate the plugin to 11.5. I'm sorry, not the plugin, the Blackmagic to 11.5 because the newer computers wouldn't read the older software. So I couldn't backdate the MacBook Pro to go to an older version in order to read the older version of that hardware encoder for Blackmagic for whatever reason. So I was stuck in like a catch-22 where I needed the older version for it to work, but it wouldn't work correctly. 11.6, yep. Breaks decklink cards on OBS 2, by the way. There you go. Aaron Coth just said that. 11.6 breaks decklink cards on OBS 2, by the way, which is, yeah, so something with that newer version for Blackmagic is not compatible with some stuff and just caused some weird audio problems. We ended up buying the Webpresenter, Blackmagic Webpresenter with an actual SDI input, HDMI input, and XLR, embedding it that way, and it worked out perfectly fine. Not a single issue. I literally went in there about 30 minutes, changed it out, got a day rate. But yeah, it took me a good 2.5 hours to just troubleshoot what was going on because it was still coming in and working, but it just wasn't clear audio. And I was able to troubleshoot it so that I can make it work. But as soon as I went to stream it out, it instantly got bad. As soon as the volume changed songs, it got bad. So it was like it would see it for a moment, and if anything changed at all, it would just go crazy. So that was a similar issue where I took a breath. I looked at what I was doing. I checked my signal flow and everything. I knew I was doing it 100% right. And it just ended up being a software issue. And that's my experience. Apparently, Aaron, if I'm seeing the chat window open right now, but if you're in here, and I saw Darren shaking his head, so if you have a similar story, I'd love to hear it, what you experienced, because it seems like I'm not the only one who's going crazy with this install.
We have had a problem with Blackmagic at the church I attend. I have no idea why the Microsoft Live Cam keeps changing perspective here. Anyways, but the Resi Ray encoder will not pass audio via SDI unless you have the absolute latest Blackmagic firmware running on it. I'm not sure what the glitch is there. Everything Blackmagic I've ever used always defaults to audio SDI audio on 1 and 2, but for whatever reason the Resi Ray encoder will not play nice audio wise with any version of firmware older than I think the last update was in late September maybe for Blackmagic.
Yeah. So it seems like in general we're having Blackmagic problems kind of across the board here. Anybody else within here have any similar stories? Maybe not just Blackmagic in general, but just similar stories with maybe audio or video where they had some kind of issue and they followed the whole chain through and they weren't able to figure out a solution for it.
I found that it depends on the drivers a lot of times too with Blackmagic, depending on the software. With Livestream Studio, it's very particular about which drivers to use with it. And the biggest issue I've found is they're inconsistent on what some drivers allow some cards to do. Like the little mini recorders will not always, either the 4K or the older version, they don't show up in all software. So encoder loaded up with them, said, oh, hey, let's put the latest, greatest software on there. Didn't work. So I had to order a 8K card to come in to overnight that in to get it to go into place. Same situation working in a church. Yeah, great feeling.
You guys were having that issue. Go ahead. I was just going to ask, you guys are having that issue with Blackmagic to OBS. I'm kind of curious what the bit rate was, because if bit rate audio is I know with OBS especially is very sensitive with bit rate fluctuation. If you don't have the proper bit rate set in OBS, it will actually chop the audio and it'll actually mix minus so bad that you can't hear it. It'll be so distorted, and it's nothing you're doing. It's nothing, no hardware or anything. It's the bit rate's not encoded properly, so it'll distort the sound so bad it'll make it like a high-pitched whine. So here's the test,
Bodie. What's the bit rate you should be using if you're doing video?
I use 44.3 on mine. So
Ed,
that's what I use.
Ed, what would you say?
I'm not an audio guy though.
For audio, sorry, I was half listening because I was opening something else here, but audio for video is 48K.
Period. Yep.
Yeah.
Every time. The reason why is it lines up. So especially if you're in the US, especially.
Well, Jeff, what I'm saying about that though is if somebody's on a show, OBS will resort to default. OBS's default is 23.2.
Because what it's doing is also pulling off. It'll also pull off of what I found with Unity, especially. You have to make sure it's at 48 if your server's at 48.
And also you have to make sure.
Windows doesn't like to do that.
Right, and you also have to make sure if you have an audio capture device like an audio card or a sound card in that PC other than the AIO sound card, you have to make sure that OBS is picking up that you're using that audio sound card versus the AIO shield, because it'll automatically default to another bit rate as well.
Very true.
Okay, you guys are saying bit rate when I think what you're talking about is sample rate, right?
Well, that's I was half, like I said, I was kind of half listening because I'm fixing a few things on the back end here, but sample rate was
Sample
what I was
rate of
talking about for 48.
not bit rate.
Right. Bit rate, I think in OBS like defaults at 160 kbs. So that's a different thing.
And OBS is the clock for that, correct?
Yes.
Is the master clock, I mean? Okay.
So I was gonna add, again, a video guy here with basic audio knowledge, right? What are we talking about? The difference was between 48 and 44.1. And why is there these differences? If anybody knows that answer.
5.9. Oh, it's not even right. It's not even right.
59.94 is
Totally
video.
was ready for that.
I
too.
could answer a video one, yeah, but if that's a legit question, I can answer that one. 59.94 versus
Just for anybody wondering, the base sample rate that OBS defaults to is 44.1. That's what it defaults to, unless you have, and that's where the error comes in, is it all depends on what the hardware is in the computer. If you have a audio sound card at or like in a separate internal PCIe audio sound card, it'll default it to 23.3, and then you have to go in and change it. If you don't, it'll give you some high pitched squealing and it'll make it everything sound.
You have different sample rates. You'll end up with timing issues and also ticking noises and other audio artifacts. So it's very important that they're aligned.
So
that's going to be. Let's also note that that's talking about what the input going into OBS is going to be. So it's taking a 48K sample rate for the audio coming in, but then once it's encoding and spitting out, that's where the bit rate and the KBS that I mentioned, the default is 160. Those are two different things. So the input is like I have my QL1, so I'm sending it 48K via Dante Virtual Sound or Dante Virtual Sound Card on my Mac, and then that's at 48. Anything on my PC, it's all coming in 48 because I set it that way. But then OBS is doing those conversions when it's encoding for the stream to knock those files out, the make the sizes manageable to be pushed out on the internet. So we're talking about two different things.
Well, yeah. So let me troubleshoot my scenario here, right? And maybe Bodhi hit something on the nail that I just missed. So we were coming out of a minus 32 board, M32, which comes out 48. We were going into an ATEM switcher, 4K ATEM switcher, the $3,000 one, because he wanted the fader. It's the only reason he wanted it. Embedding audio into that, and then embedding that audio into the SDI line, and then the SDI line was going to that little box, and then getting converted again to USB-C, essentially. Does that embedding change my 48 to something else when it goes down the SDI line? Is that maybe where I had a mess up, maybe that I could have changed somewhere going into OBS? So OBS, I did set to 48. I knew the ATEMs were doing 48. I knew the minus 32 was doing 48 because I asked. But I didn't check, and again, maybe my oversight. Does that change when I embedded it to the SDI? Does that change 48 to something else? Or am I getting too technical?
No, you're not getting too technical.
The active embedding itself doesn't necessarily change. It depends on what the intermediary devices are set to, but you need to have your bit your bit depth set the same, right? Whether you're 24 or kilobit, or 24-bit or 32-bit floating point, for example, that has to be aligned. The sample rate has to be aligned as well. And then, as Ed was saying, when you're going to stream, then you need to decide on what's a decent actual bit rate to stream the audio. And typically, you see like 128 kilobit per second AAC or something like that for most streams like this one.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess that my missing link there would be, so how could I check what, once the ATEM embedded that into the SDI line, what I was receiving on the other end? How could I have used some kind of third party something to verify what I was receiving other than what OBS just said, hey, this is what I see? If there is a thing like that, or is that I have to use a tester?
Would there really be, because you'd be losing?
I think Robert froze there for a second. Omar, I guess I'm confused. How were you getting into the embedder? Whatever was embedding the audio.
So we embedded the audio XLR into the ATEM. I'm sorry, XLR into the ATEM inputs, right?
Okay, got it.
And then in ATEM, you can embed your
Right,
audio
so-
into the SDI lines. So SDI line went to that little box, the Blackmagic 3G recorder or whatever, and then that's how I got audio into that embedder, so that I had essentially video and audio coming out of one box.
Well, the
It was-
ATEM was your embedder at that point, not the
Yes.
little recorder. The ATEM was the embedder, right?
For the
So-
first setup, yes.
Right. So, but going into your ATEM, you were analog. So it didn't matter anything about the Midas board because you came out of an analog feed. So at that point, the sample rate wouldn't matter either way because you've come out analog, gone into the ATEM. If the ATEM was set for 48, then it's going to send it 48 on the SDI line.
Okay, so me embedding doesn't change anything is what I'm getting at, right? Which is what Roland just said.
Right. Well, and
Okay.
again, the ATEM was the embedder. So the ATEM is now doing, essentially, you took it out of a digital console, did a digital to analog conversion, sent it through XLR into the ATEM, which did an analog to digital conversion, resampling it at 48K, and then it's going to stay that way as it spits it out on either the SDI lines or HDMI lines, whatever you're embedding to, until it gets to your web presenter or web recorder, whatever you were using. So
Got it. And then I see Robert Carson. Are you back? Did we get you back? I know you had something that we wanted
I'm
to
here.
add. Yeah, what were we trying to add? You broke up when you were trying to say something.
Oh, I was just saying it. I know ATEM causes a delay coming out of it a lot of times if your settings aren't right in the actual ATEM software.
So yeah, it could have been, but so this was the 3000 ATEM HD.
Yeah,
4K one.
the 2ME, the Production Studio 4K.
No, the one below that. So it's not even. I mean, it's like a 1ME. It wouldn't be the 2ME one, but it's
Okay. I know what you're talking about.
it's like $3,000. So like before, it used to be the rackable one, and then for an
Yeah.
extra $2,000, you get it with like all the interfaces, which no one uses unless you own Blackmagic cameras. That one.
Is that the TV Studio?
Yes, the TV
newer one?
studio. Yeah, but
Yeah.
not the rack one, the actual on the table one, which looks honestly, if you
Right.
buy that for 3K, it looks really good for a breakout room. It looks fantastic. But that whole top layer, you're not using shit unless you own Blackmagic cameras. And if you want to do fancy slides, you have the buttons to change your fancy slides. That's about it. I see Darren's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it is.
But I'm just enjoying some flashbacks here. Some good, some not so good. More CBD oil, I'll be fine. Trust me.
So, all right. So I have another one, and maybe Jeff can help me with this one. I was doing a Zoom to NDI to vMix, right? Which is, I haven't had problems with this so far. This was me speculating that at one point I heard the fans going off in my MacBook Pro, and I thought maybe I was hearing some audio stuff. Maybe the CPU on my Mac was getting taxed, and I was hearing this type of audio sound. But someone said that because I'm doing the IP side, my network, which I only had 4 computers on there for NDI on a gigaport, my network might have been getting taxed as well, which causes the same audio problem. Is there a way for me to determine between my CPU kind of getting maxed out versus my network without monitoring it, essentially? Like, is there just an audio something that I can hear, or are they just that similar? And I heard, so Roland, I saw you shaking your head.
Yeah. If you actually push your network, pushing your network hard is almost just as bad as pushing your CPU hard. So if your CPU is pushing hard, then your network's going to suffer because it's having a buffer and everything. Omar, I kind of think we're friends, right? So friends don't let friends use Macs.
Oh.
Okay, I
changed
now
it up,
like
baby.
this man. I now like this man. Okay, like I always had respect for Jeff. I always had respect for Jeff, but now I really like him.
There is a
Assuming
certain
that
part
you
whenever you're
troubleshot
talking
all
about
of
the MacBooks. I mean, and I say this because I've got MacBooks and I've got Mac Minis, and you get a life out of them, and then it's so easy to be tempted to go, oh, I'll just grab this, and it's past its life. It's past its capability. I mean, even the latest, greatest ones still don't hold a candle when you start running a whole lot of encoding software and start pushing them really, really hard. But definitely monitor.
If you've ensured that all your physical layer stuff is good, like all your cabling and that kind of thing, and if you're using gigabit wired, which you should be using gigabit wired, it's pretty much impossible for like a single NDI stream to max that out. I mean, you're looking at 100, 120 megabits per second.
Yeah, even
like
5.
that.
You could do 5 or 6 in a gigabit link.
Yeah, and you're fine. And you'll typically have the kind of artifacts that you see like on a stream across the internet when you have internet connectivity problems and you see the blocky video, for example. You'll see those similar types of things if it's a network issue. But if it's like a high frequency whine, then it's definitely going to be your CPU, which is why it's best to offload all this stuff onto hardware. That's what I do. I am a Mac person, and I decided that the Mac, and I think you can run this issue with Windows too, but with all the stuff that we do these days, with all the audio and the video and everything else, just trying to do this on a general purpose computer with a lot of programs and libraries that are written poorly doesn't make sense. And so I made the move to hardware. I'm not a pro like the rest of you. I'm an inadvertent COVID videographer, and I've invested in moving stuff into hardware. And so I'm looking at my Mac right now. I'm using 1 core on my 8-core Mac to do all this stuff because I'm doing it all in hardware instead.
Awesome. So we're friends too now, just so you know. Thank you for defending me against my other friends who don't defend me.
We just give you the right advice. That's all.
Okay, so I own a brand new MacBook 2020 at the beginning of the year. I own, as of 2 months ago, an MSI GE66 Raider, which I heard was very good. So I am, because of the price point, probably going to get a second PC at this point to do more work, because honestly, a Mac at the cost rate plus the dongles and all the other, it's just not worth it anymore. Maybe next year when I need to have, I don't know, whatever playback system I need to have on only the Mac based computers, I will go back to Macs. But this MacBook Pro 2020 should last at least, another year.
Well, just so you guys know, I'm running.
I see Jeff like,
well,
try a few
Depends what
months.
you throw at it.
I run a 2014 MacBook Pro that I still use on plenty of shows, and that's not the one that's running OBS right now. So that wasn't the one that was giving me a problem. The MacBook Pro is pretty much always solid. I am starting to notice that, for 2014, I ask it to do a lot. So I do notice that, and I constantly have to start dumping things off my hard drive just because I work on too many things at the same time. So my hard drive fills up, and that's when I start getting laggy. Once I get down to 20 gigs left on my drive, on my SSD, then I'm starting to have some issues. But my MacBook Pro runs great, and it's 2014. That's the kind of the last good MacBook Pro, I believe, though, as far as having the connectors and ports that are useful.
So Jeff, a lot of government officials are still using those exact laptops, because we're putting together a big opioid crisis symposium in December, and I'm dealing with attorney generals all over the country, and these guys are still using those MacBook Pro 14.
Well, that just has to do with the government not giving them the money to buy up newer equipment. I mean, you're talking, my wife works for the county, and her computer that she brought home from work was a 2002 laptop, and I looked at her and said, "Are you freaking kidding me right now? You're in a county that makes $7 million just in your department in every 3 months, and they can't afford to give you a better laptop?"
Hey, buddy, VGA connectors are coming back. Keep that in mind.
I hope not.
VGA.
So Jeff, always Jeff Keithley, right? There's only one today. Just I gotta make sure. Okay. Always,
Jeff.
Always been PC based, or
I started with a Macintosh, so that far back, Apple IIe's, and yeah, it was fun. But I moved into PCs, 286s, 386s, building 486s. I got into building a whole lot of them, and over the years as a system integrator, we built a lot of systems for clients. So I knew how to tweak a PC, and Macs were just not what we used in our world. I did buy mine probably around that 12. I think I got a couple 2012s, and I got a couple 2014. So around that same era, my MacBook, I think one of them is a 2014 MacBook Ed actually. Those, they work fine as long as they don't ask them to do anything more than what they do. And I agree with you about when that SSD drive fills up, it. Matter of fact, one of those only runs Windows because I can't get it to run the Mac side anymore. They're boot camped, they're parallels. I can't get it to run the Mac side anymore for whatever reason. But
You know why that is, though? Does anybody know why when the hard drive gets filled up, it starts limiting what the actual what actual Mac can do?
Because you end up with swapping, because Mac OS is based on FreeBSD and you do have a swap file. And so what happens is when you fill up your hard drive, you no longer have swap. And even if you were within the physical constraints of the RAM that's in your system, the FreeBSD that's underlying Mac OS will still have performance issues, and you end up with all kinds of stuff. So you need to make sure that you don't fill up your primary SSD. It's better to keep your video stuff generally, except what you're working on, immediately on a separate SSD, just so that you don't inadvertently have that kind of problem. And there are utilities that you can run in your taskbar that show you, what your RAM is, what your CPU is, and how much free disk space you have as well.
I just say my simplest solution was just run it as a PC and it works fine.
That's about 80% of it. But how many of you actually knew that prior to him saying that?
Now, I was about to say, who let that guy in? Where's he been?
That's about 80%. That's about 80% of it, because he is right. There is a swap parallel on the RAM that goes with the hard drive. That's why Macs run so good and so efficiently and quickly when they're operating properly and the hard drive's not filled up. Once the hard drive stops getting filled, your RAM cache is on the hard drive. So when your hard drive gets filled, that's why you slow down versus a PC. A PC's got 32 gigs. There's no RAM cache on the hard drive. My hard drives can be completely 100% slam full, and I've got an external hard drive I'm sticking in. My computer's going to boot up, run, and operate just as quick as it did if it had nothing on the hard drive. So that's what it is. It's the way the motherboard lane lines are for the RAM cache to the hard drive is why it does what it does, and it has that swap file cache like he was saying.
Now, is the MacBook adjustable when you want to change that swap file like you can on a PC? No. Because you can change the size or delete it completely on a PC.
You can tinker with it if you really know. You can tinker with it if you really know what you're doing, but it's best not to do that. The thing that you have to keep in mind is you pay a Mac tax, right? And so you have to pay roughly 1.5 times what you would pay for an equivalent PC, at least, if not 2 times, to get equivalent performance on Apple hardware. That's just how it is. It's balanced off by ease of use and security. So, that's why I'm actually very interested to see this new Apple Silicon, where they're coming out using their own chips. They've walked away from Intel, because everything I'm hearing is that those actually are putting them more in the equivalent price performance ballpark with the Windows machines, and it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Well, if we go like anything in the past, when Apple made their own chips before, it's going to be a drastic failure.
Well, wait,
I don't know.
Didn't we talk earlier?
Go ahead.
Didn't we talk a week or two ago that Apple didn't really make their chips? That they were still. Well, even in the past, they never really made their own chips.
When they first came out, they were their own chip manufacturer. They were competing with Intel for their own chips. They scrapped it after 2 years of production and went AMD, and they only used AMD-based chips in Apple's in the early production years. And then they went Intel-based in their chips. And AMD couldn't give them the single-core performance that they were looking for graphical processing and things like that. It was stumping the CPU and taxing the CPU, so they switched over to Intel-based CPUs. Apple didn't become popular for 3 years after they actually came out as far as an actual computer, because the CPUs were so garbage that they couldn't even process a single thing.
I think you're thinking of Motorola chips, because they used Motorola chips until they switched.
Motorola was based on Apple's design, though. It was manufactured by the Apple engineers through Motorola. So essentially it was an Apple chip that they were doing. Yes, they're taking their own chip manufacturing into their own hands and processing it themselves now. But the last time any engineer for Apple had anything to do with the chips in their computer, they were a disgrace and the worst thing that you could possibly operate on.
You see what you started, Jeff? You see what you started? All that war. Anyways, so
it's just a little button you press and Bodhi goes.
So I want to ask.
It's the nerd. I can't help it. There's no off switch with it.
I want to ask Scott Richards. I see you down here in the corner. You got any stories? I see you kind of nodding your head at a couple of things and shaking. You got any stories for us that we can kind of dive into maybe and speculate on?
Well, I can tell you one thing for certain. You shouldn't be running the setup I am right now because I have a separate Ndi camera app on my cell phone as a webcam and a hardwired USB audio interface. So you're most likely noticing the significant audio delay or mismatch in my system. So I've just got caught off unprepared for tonight's stream.
No, so you look fantastic though, but yes, we noticed it. Leland was definitely shaking his head. Yes, he sees it. So if anybody doesn't know, and I'm not sure which one you're using yet, and correct me if I'm wrong, the NDI for the phones, I believe it's free on Androids and there's a paid one, and then on Apple it's $20. As long as you're on the same Wi-Fi, it all connects.
It's actually not available on the Android platform anymore officially. You have to
You gotta get a hold of
get the backside of it.
And I was lucky I picked up the app briefly as COVID started when they had it for free for 60 days. So I didn't pay a cent. And I'm running it on my phone, and it's looking pretty good.
Sienna also makes one for the iOS platform that's actually, I think, a little bit better than the new tech one. Actually, you can do full res NDI over it if your Wi-Fi can actually support it. Which is then you don't have that latency issue that you're finding, and it's not much more. I think it's like $20, $30, something like that.
Speaking of the new tech NDI stuff. Has anybody had problems with the scan converter crashing on a Mac consistently, like every single time?
No, I use it a lot, and I haven't had a problem with that or NDI input, and I run them both at the same time.
I mean, I've got an older Mac, so I'm just, I'm not sure what it is that's causing it. I don't use it that often, so I'm not, considerably worried about it because I am getting ready to build a new rig. But, just out of curiosity, it seems to happen all the time. So.
I'm guessing it's just not compatible.
Did you update the drives in that Mac with the download? Like, so when there's two downloads, there's the NDI tools and then there's the driver update for Macs.
I think so. I'd have to go back and look. I did it a while ago when we were building out a studio at the company I was working for, but as of right now, I'm not working for them right now. So I don't know. I can't remember the last thing that I did there.
I would just I would go back to the download ndi.tv, go back to download and reinstall that. Yeah, because that update for the hard drive stuff is because Mac's got its own little thing and it modifies it for NDI to work. So like Windows has the DirectX 11, I think it is now, whatever. Like Mac doesn't have anything like that. That's kind of like a thing that you got to download. That's a whole nother topic. I won't get into it. I don't want to start a war on here. Roland is very knowledgeable. Bodie's very knowledgeable. Jeff's knowledgeable. Leland's knowledgeable. You got John over here. You got Andy.
Right. And it's something I'm getting ready to build out a vMix rig, and so I want to figure out exactly what I'm gonna do. Obviously, I can't do that with a Mac, but figure out what I need to have and what I can and can't do with these NDIs. So.
What about Mike? Mike Lesperance. You got a scenario we can troubleshoot in theory here?
The only I haven't been doing this as long as some of you guys have. The one thing that I ran into early on is I have an iMac Pro. I use Wirecast. I have the Stream Decks and all that, and I had I was not able to go out from Wirecast using, going out in the Zoom virtual window into Wirecast. It didn't exist under 11 point, I had to back everything back to Mojave, I guess is what I'm saying. I wasn't able to use anything Catalina. So I had to completely rebuild my whole hard drive and go back to...
There was a couple other people that had the same experience where they had to go back to Mojave. They couldn't use the new Catalina to run a couple of the things that they were doing. They had to reboot back or revert back.
Yeah, so Catalina's been having a problem with a lot of people. I know I just had some stuff too. He might have a story on. But did you find a solution other than, or was that the solution that was to backdate it?
No, that was the solution, was to go back to Mojave. And I've read, I've seen a lot of things on the forums and that, and pretty much every time it just seems to be a Catalina problem. Of course, but it's a lot of work to have to go back and completely redo your hard drive back to Mojave. It was a couple of days. So, but since then, everything works great. So no problems at all.
Yeah, that's been I stopped at Mojave. So running this older Mac, I had been on Yosemite for the longest time because I had an older version of Playback Pro that was keeping me on Yosemite. So I held out as long as I could until the point of diminishing returns, because I was now hindered on all my other programs because of Playback Pro. So once Playback Pro became not worth it to me as much, and then I'm also a QLab user, so anything I need to play on Playback Pro, I can just play in QLab. So I just said, forget it, and I went to Mojave. I avoided Catalina. I'm still avoiding Catalina. And now that I'm saying my 2014 MacBook, I've been thinking of maybe upgrading another one, and then using this one just for like email, personal computing. And I'm looking at 2019s that I can run Mojave on instead of the 2020s that are going to be forced to the 64-bit with Catalina. So
There are no. You can't run
We actually
Mojave on
talked to-
anything 2019.
Oh no, I have to go back to all the way to 2018. Is that the? So
We actually talked a bit about this on the Zoom Kitchen last week, if you remember. And
I think I missed it last week because I was
no,
was on
you
a
were
job.
on the one that you were on the one
2
that
weeks
I was
ago,
on. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And so I kept probably a 2014 or 2015 MacBook Pro running Yosemite just to use Playback Pro on, and that's the only thing that laptop does. But Playback Pro is still a pretty big part of my workflow. So I mean, I can trigger videos within Wirecast, but I still like having that, the ability of plugging a computer into a switcher and just using a piece of software to trigger it. So, and Playback Pro is still works pretty well.
So I've had a lot of luck, good luck with iMix 16 Pro. Actually, it's not quite as high end, I don't think necessarily, as Playback Pro or certainly QLabs, but it does work very well for audio and video queuing. It does speak OSC, and I actually
What's
don't
that,
do it.
Roland? I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the program.
It's called iMix 16 Pro.
iMix 16 Pro.
Yeah, iMix 16 Pro. It's less expensive than Playback Pro. It's certainly less expensive than QLab. It supports OSC. It can the guy who codes it also does some other things. It can interface with MIDI and lighting and all this stuff. And I actually don't run mine on a computer at all. I run it on an iPad Mini, and I just have that plugged into an input on my ATEM Mini Pro, and I can I just sit here and jab at the screen to change things manually, and I can also call up a playlist, and I can script it with Companion via OSC to tell it to pick up a playlist and play that, and it works really well. I mean, it's only like $60 or $70 versus what is it, like $900 for and up for some of this other stuff. Yeah. So
yeah.
Has anybody found anything on the PC side though for playback? I've got a client that's actually looking for it. Tell me, Omar.
AV Playback by Gregory Mizell. He's out of Orlando, Florida. He created a program that you might actually really like. So he's got 3 versions of it, or 3 flavors of it, however you want to call it.
AV Playback?
Yeah, AV Playback. He's got three versions of it. Some of he's the program, the designer of the whole thing. So when you talk to customer support, you're talking to him. What's really cool about this program, though, is that the backups that you connect to it auto syncs everything. So like as you're uploading to the primary, the backups are getting uploaded as well. So if anything happens, your backup is already ready to go. Yeah. So Leland just threw it up there on the bottom here. If you want to take him full screen real fast, all these windows he's showing you down here, they all pop in and out. You can resize them, you can shape them, do whatever you want. If you get the bigger version, think of this program as a media server almost, but it runs as a playback machine. And it's got a lot of built-in features. It auto plugs and plays with Stream Deck. So if you guys are Stream Deck users, you literally plug it into there, detect AV playback, and he's already populated it for you. It'll auto-populate all your keys on your Stream Deck, and you can, like anything else, you can move them around however you see fit. But this program is very versatile. He gives you 3 different versions for different flavors, or 3 different levels of it. So you can L1 to L3. Each one's, obviously there's restrictions for the cheaper version and then more for the other version. I will say, AV Playback, you need to be like I don't want to say vMix as a guy, but you need to be intelligent about the PC you put it on, because it is a powerful program. There's a lot of features in it that if you're a playback guy or a MIDI guy or any other, or well, QLabs is similar as far as demands go. It has some very demanding features that if you don't have the PC for it, you will freeze up and lock up yourself. And you can call him and he'll send you a report and he'll tell you, hey, your computer has this, it needs to have this, minimum standards for things that we're doing here.
Well, believe it or not, I'm actually thinking about this for the cloud for a client. So that was what brings me to that. Mac is, well, there's great software out there for Mac, but not in the cloud. So
yeah, so funny you say that, because Greg, who created it, we're friends outside of work, and I was at his house one day, and he's same as you. He despises Mac. That's why he's built.
I don't
only
despise it. I just don't like it.
He doesn't like it, well, for similar reasons. So as a coder, he feels that Microsoft is much more transparent when it comes to updates and it comes to doing things that make your program reliable down the road. Where Mac, what they end up doing a lot of times is they say, hey, here's an update. By the way, everybody else has it as well. So get to work, like figure it out. And they don't really tell you too much of what's going on where PCs or Microsoft will give a kind of very list of, hey, we're killing this program, or we're killing this functionality, or we're taking this away, or we're modifying this to do XYZ. If you use any of these functions or features, please update to da 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 da. Here's the SDK for that. So he does a lot with it. I was gonna say real quick about Playback Pro. Someone made a comment on Facebook. Todd Woodward. If I used Playback a couple of years ago, it showed good promise. I was told by the German friends that Casper CG is what they use over there, but that's Rocco Desante. Sorry, that's not their comment I was looking for. But anyways, Roman Turney said, that was a real bad of DT Video Labs. It's not like they weren't given notice. They dragged their heels. It's still in beta for 64-bit. Here's the thing about that comment. And the reason I want to bring it up to everybody here. Because Playback Pro was such a dominating force for so many years on the Mac side and just in general in our industry, when that happened, that kind of like the collapse because of Mac's crazy updates and everything on this 1 year, it opened up this whole new market, and it just showed that old mentality of you pay for this license, you got a key for it, you can use it wherever you need it to. It kind of went away, and now everything coming out, you have to pay for something. Not every product, but a lot of products that are coming out nowadays that have any value in them, it's a paid service, so you either pay yearly or monthly, because they don't want to be put in the same situation as Playback Pro was, where they gave a model that, hey, you pay this amount, you get the software, and you run it forever. The problem with that model is that you can't do updates, you can't innovate, you can't do things, because unless you're constantly selling new products, that cash flow, at some point caps off, and then it's hard to do updates, if you're just giving it away for free. So that whole model that used to be a thing is now shifted, and now a lot of things that are coming out that are relevant, there's some kind of watch out you got to pay for. D3 is a paid for thing. You get a license for a year, or you rent it out for a month. A lot of the software that are just coming out, they update it, and it's because of Playback Pro was such a huge success, and the one failure they had was, hey, you buy a key, you get free updates for life, but that model is unsustainable unless you are the coder and the guy that does everything by yourself, which everybody's different. Like
even then, it's still not, because our industry is such a small industry.
Right.
In the whole scope of comparing it to somebody that there's all these desktops out there that are having whatever software installed on them to run just simple little things, like think of Microsoft. I mean, it's on everything, yes, but they have a continual update all the time. Whereas with us, I mean, you're talking about maybe a couple thousands or something like that. And for what I'm just looking over on this guy's software, yeah, it looks really good, but I agree that if we don't keep supporting them, they just disappear. And I can't tell you how many pieces of software I've had over the years that just have disappeared because they couldn't make any more money because they sold everything they could.
Yep.
I just went through my emails and found a ton of products that I had purchased years ago that I can't even access anymore because the sites are just gone. Their history.
So I just want to touch on 2 points going backwards. To Michael, one of the things you could do is partition your drive on your Mac if Playback Pro is holding you back. And this is one of the things I thought about doing, but I already have a boot camp on this MacBook Pro, and it's a 2014, like I was talking about. But you could partition your drive, run the older OS that you need for Playback Pro, and then update if you need to. Although I think was your problem that your machine I think your machine could run Mojave. It's not that it
Yeah.
was a 2019 or 2020. It's just you went to Catalina and it was a pain in the ass to go back. So if you need stuff for Catalina, then partition your drive so that you can have an OS that works with your Playback Pro that you still need, and then on the other partition have the newer operating system for whatever other new stuff.
You're conflating two problems. So the problem I had was actually a Wirecast problem, or it was a Zoom problem, or it was one of those two pieces of software isn't compatible with Catalina. And I'm going to guess, even with the Wirecast update, like my understanding is people still having problems. I was trying to go from Zoom in using the virtual output of, sorry, was that? No, I was trying to go from Wirecast using the virtual output of Wirecast into Zoom. That would not work. It wouldn't even, it wasn't even in the menu. It just wouldn't even show up. And that was a problem that I was having within, when I upgraded from Mojave to Catalina. The Playback Pro, I don't actually have a problem with that because I have older laptops that I use just solely for playback. And I can put them into a switcher. I can put them into whatever I need to. Just use Playback Pro, and I'm good to go. Now, at some point, it would be good if Playback Pro would do updates so that it's compatible with all the new software. But I'm fine for right now. And I can tell you two other things. One is, I work in a casino entertainment venue, and Playback Pro, that's what I see more than anything coming through with the tours. A lot of people still using that to trigger their video. And the second thing is, if any of you ever listen to Scott Galloway's podcast, he calls what Omar was referring to as a rundle, which is, I think, stands for recurring, like a recurring revenue stream, cut with bundle. So the new term is for recurring revenue is rundle. Just point of interest.
Gotcha. Sorry that I mixed that up.
That's okay. No, it's fine. I'm just to be clear.
The other point, I think that it was, Roland mentioned that QLab is expensive. One of the things I do rent to own, so I'll only rent QLab for the shows that I need it for the advanced features. I use it all the time for audio. If I just need 2-track audio, I'll use QLab for play-ons on corporate gigs, things like that, because that's free. But once I start needing some of the advanced features, I just do rent to own, and it's like, if I just need the video license, it's $4 a day. So if I have a 3-day show, I spend $12. And then that counts towards, once I've rented it 100 times or something, with just a single license, it's paid for itself. So it's a good mod. I actually really like QLab's model for that, because you're not locked in spending a ton of money like you are with Playback Pro, and then they drag their feet on updating to the 64-bit, which they haven't done. Somebody in the Facebook mentioned. So it's I really like QLab's model. It's subscription but not, and you're working towards eventually you will just have the software perpetual. So
yeah, and I wanted to echo Ed's point about the rent to own. I do the same thing with QLab, and there's a couple other important things I think to mention about this. I think if you are a sort of sole proprietor and you are streaming and opping your own shows, it doesn't matter what tool you use. If you are someone who works in a larger production environment with other companies, having a tool like Playback Pro, if you were a video person, you had to have Playback Pro, or at least know how to use it. QLab, for me as an audio engineer, I started using it over some other things I was using because it had become somewhat of an industry standard. Even though it's expensive, it had become an industry standard. And what's really important about that is you start working with producers and directors who say, okay, we have got QLab on this show. Oh, hey, can you do this kind of crossfade, this weight cue? Like, they know enough about what it can do so that you can program it. And I think if you show up to the gig with some other tool that is less standard, they're going to look at you funny, and they might have some concerns. And then also to Mike's point about using Playback Pro, it sounds like to me, Mike, you use that tool and probably some others because it does one thing really well, which is playback videos. You don't need to do all these sort of fancy things with triggering other cues and all that. A lot of value in that because, we all know when we're on the job, the last thing we want is like, oh, these set of cues are broken. Why? And then you got to spend time figuring that out. No, it's like hit play and it goes, simple stuff. And I'm also just really impressed also with just how powerful QLab is. It especially as we move forward with people who are doing 1 and 2 person events where normally you'd have like a crew of 6. You sometimes have to build a lot of very complex cues ahead of time, and it's capable of doing that very well.
Most of the guys that I see using QLab that are coming through on tours are guys that are trying to do like 5 things. They're trying to trigger lights, they're trying to trigger audio samples, they're trying to, or audio sound effects, and they're trying to do video all at the same time. I do see it, I do see it I probably saw it on 2 or 3 shows last year, but I just tend to see for video, I see Playback Pro a lot more.
Curious if anyone's ever tried ShowQ system. It's another one I've come across, which is an audio and video playback feed for PC. I don't believe it's available on Windows.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one yet, but I wanted to clarify some things that I've been seeing in the chats going on Facebook and in here. So, and this is again my opinion. Anybody has anything different, please contribute. Malumum, in my opinion, is a media server. MIDI is a playback system. Another one was Playback Pro, playback. QLabs is like a media server. So like these like Reslim would be like in the media server realm. These do playback functions, but they're really meant for more than just that. MIDI is just to playback videos. Playback Pro just plays back videos. AV Playback primarily just plays back videos. There's maybe 1 or 2 other ones I can't think of right now that are just some kind of form of playing video back or some kind of audio back. Everything else that's being brought up in these comments, D3 as well is definitely a media server. D3 is a media server. Malum is a media server. QLabs is a media server. Those fall into a whole nother realm. Yes, they do play back stuff, but they do so much more that I don't think it's credit to be calling them just a playback machine. I think that doesn't do them justice.
I'm going to disagree with you just because I wouldn't call Malumin or QLab a media server because it's running on a local machine. It's not a dedicated piece of hardware like a D3 server or a watchout server is. And I know watchout, you can build your own watchout systems, but it's a dedicated piece of hardware. You're not really doing anything else with a watchout system. So in that sense, it runs local. Like I run QLab on my 2014 MacBook, and it's something that I can take on any gig with me. I don't need anything special, and I can, because I have 2 DisplayPort and an HDMI port out, I can send 3 video outs if I want to, plus have my internal display. But I still wouldn't call it a media server. To something Mike pointed out, in the theater world that I work in, sometimes QLab is like the thing. That's what everyone's bringing in. Every theater has it. Now, also to Leland's question about SCS, the theater that I used to work at, when we had all Windows machines in the 4 theaters, it was a PAC with 4 theaters, so every booth had a Windows machine, and it was running SCS on it, ShowQ systems. Once we switched to Macs, then every machine got QLab. But yeah, so SCS I've used. It was
curious how you liked it. Was it something you'd recommend anyone at all, or is it just
so it's powerful?
It's relatively inexpensive.
Relatively well, it's almost the same as QLab. It's like $600-700.
Oh no, the platinum version for single users $250, and you can actually get a reduced lighter version for under $100. That's why I'm asking.
Then they changed their pricing. It used to be like $600. It was not.
Professional's $150, and their Professional Plus is $200, and their Platinum's $250, and then it goes up to multi-user license after that.
I work with a small college, and I found ShowQ the easiest thing to get students who, with no background in this sort of thing, I found ShowQ to be the easiest program to get them
And they
onto.
have very cheap student versions as well that are even less than that.
Yeah, and
like
you know what? We have several students that have done that.
cheap.
They're running it on their own machines. One oddball I'll throw out there that I've seen, not specifically for video playout, but I'm starting to see Ableton, of all things, which may be the most unintuitive DAW out there. I run Pro Tool. I'm an audio guy.
This is why
Pro
you're
Tools and
seeing a
Audition,
lot of
you know?
Ableton right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
That's
and
why.
crowd
It's
noise. My
because of
God, the
the
crowd
guys'
noise app for what NFL and MLB. Fred Valdowitz, TV legend and the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Science, worked for the NFL on it. But yeah, that's exactly why. Firing all the fake crowd noise for all the athletic stuff. But if you walk into all the mega churches, they've got the musicians on stage already have Ableton going, and they have virtual tracks if they need them. The bass player tests positive for COVID, they just open channel 25, and they got a magic bass player. But they're tying in lighting. I'm seeing tying in of lighting cues, and I'm waiting for pyro. I want to see pyro. I know they'd like to see Ableton software be part of the pyro, in that it explodes with the pyro, but that's just an opinion. So
it's funny you say that. I have a colleague who uses QLab as the time code for the fire systems for fireworks shows. So
that would make sense.
Not using Ableton, but because there's multiple types. The way he explains it on his shows, there's different types of time code that the different systems need. So he manages it using QLab to spit those things out. Because it's also, obviously the audio is synced to the show, the lighting is synced to the show.
A friend's an LD, exceptional LD, and in the last few years, a lot of his work on the side has been specifically with pyro, and so he's had to learn all the different cueing and all the different timing. The days of just being a DMX friendly are gone. You got to know what everybody's using for sync.
Right.
If you want to learn more about this, the guru, the Yoda of this industry of show control, John Huntington, is going to be on Practical Show Tech this Friday. He's talking about networking. He's talking about show networking. Yeah.
Show networking. Yeah. I'm
So
hoping to catch that.
Related.
I got that book.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Practical Show Tech. Practical Show Tech. So if you go to practicalshow.tech,
I'll put it in the chat.
Great. That show. So in the beginning of the pandemic, before we even started doing AV Tech Talks, I was, newly out of work, like I'm sure all of us were, and spending about 30 hours a week watching webinars between the Barco, the great content that was being put out there, and Practical Show Tech was one of the ones I did not miss every single day, even when they went to doing 2 webinars a day. They were doing a noon and a 4 p.m. Eastern time. And the first 60 episodes, I don't think I missed a single one. Really great information. And for me, it was somewhat inspiring to start doing AV Tech Talks. So I do, though, want to kind of switch gears for a second, if I can, and take some of the questions. We had a handful of questions that came in on Facebook. I know Michael had asked 2 very early on. So I'm going to take one of them. So he asked, when we were troubleshooting still, why buy 4K monitors to scale them back down to 1080p for streaming? So I'm going to, now that we have run through my signal flow with the audio problem today, I'm going to talk about maybe just quickly how I'm doing this show with Zoom, because this might help some people who are looking for, easy ways to do certain things. So as we can see, both on the webinar side and on Facebook, I just switched this back to gallery. So I have a Stream Deck, and what I'm doing on my 4K monitor is, it's a laptop with a 4K display, and I have a external monitor hooked up to it, and I'm using Zoom in dual monitor mode. So by doing that, I get the speaker view and I get the gallery view. I keep gallery view on the main screen, and then the second screen becomes, speaker view, or if someone shares a screen, it goes to there, or if I spotlight, it'll go to the second screen. So I drag both of those windows onto my 4K display, and then I size them so I have two 1920 by 1080 windows sitting on this 4K canvas. And then I'm doing my window captures in OBS. So I'm not taking a full-size 4K and scaling it down to 1080. I'm taking two 1080s and not having OBS have to do any scaling. Now, because we're pushing to Facebook, I actually am scaling down a little bit to 720 because Facebook is for live streams is taking 720/30. So I am scaling down slightly, but because I'm capturing a 1080 window, if I was pushing 1080 out of OBS, it would be a 1-to-1 and there wouldn't be any scaling. OBS wouldn't be doing a lot of heavy lifting. I am scaling down just so that my records can stay at 1080. Which is actually silly. I keep debating, but our meeting here as panelists, we're getting 720 because, which, hold on, I have to thank the DVE store for their continued support as we get 720 in our meetings, thanks to them. So we have 720 in our Zoom webinar because of their continued support. Guy and his team are great over at dvestore.com. Go check them out for all your video needs. Thank you. So with that done, I could do these windows instead of doing two 1080 windows. I could bring them down to 720. But like I said, for the recording that I do into OBS, I guess I am scaling up a 720 signal to 1080 to then it gets scaled back down. So maybe it does make more sense to make these windows 720. But that's why I'm using a 4K monitor. So now I can put these two windows on one display, do my two independent window captures. I still have real estate on that display. Plus, I have an external display, and that's where OBS lives, so that I'm not, having windows overlapping. If anyone's ever done, tried to do two window captures of Zoom or anything with OBS, and you've got windows on top of windows, and then you're worrying about your mouse, going over the screen, it's a real pain. So,
and which 4K monitor is that you're using?
So the monitor is built into my laptop. It's an Asus M15 with a 4K display.
So it's not a standalone monitor?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
I had found the similar workflows really work well with some LGs that are 4K. They're 43 inches, so it's a good size where you can be close to it and not feel like it's too big. And then also gives you plenty of real estate to move things around. And those have just become amazing tools for us. We've probably got 8 of them now. It also takes 4 HDMI inputs. So you take those 4 inputs in and you can actually do a quad split or side by side or what, but especially the quad split is just ideal because it works out to a 1920 by 1080 signal on each one of them. And man, those have been just workhorses for us. They actually discontinued the model we have and they have a new model out, but it's a 43-inch frame, and Dell has the same thing, but don't get the Dell. I have 2 Dells. The Dells have 2 HDMI inputs, a full-size DisplayPort, and a mini DisplayPort for the 3 people out there that use mini DisplayPort for anything at all. And I've got a bunch of cables trying to make adapters to make it work. We finally figured out the right combination and the right cable. But I tell you what, those LGs have just been great because it's straight 4 HDMI ins and you're done.
That's great.
If I'm actually standing in front of one of those 43-inch LGs, the new one, and it's fantastic because it has the direct video in, and then it has those 4 HDMIs. And the way I'm using it is I'm actually using a picture-in-picture mode where I'm running the multi-view from my A10 Mini Pro, and I have that up in my upper right corner so that I don't actually have to have a separate multi-view confidence monitor. As it were, and it works really well, and it's a steal. It's like $550 for this huge, 5K monitor. It also comes with a physical remote control, which is great if you need to reapportion the different virtualized displays that you have on it. So I can second that for anyone, and at like $550, it's a steal for what you get.
That's pretty great. Another thing to mention in my workflow, just before we move on, and I'll tell you the reason I bought. So I was going to go with a 4K display external, but I needed a new laptop anyway. And then when I saw one that I could just get the 4K display, I was like, great, I'm just going to do that. And whatever my external is, I can just use any of the 1080 monitors I have. So that was kind of my rationale for getting a laptop with a 4K display. But but the workflow of the show too. So when I'm doing switches, I have my Stream Deck and I'm switching my scenes, one that has the gallery view as a window capture, one as a speaker view. But then also in Zoom for the webinar, I change the view so that the attendees who are watching can see speaker view or gallery depending on what that's happening. So right now I'm doing it as a double switch. I am going to program hotkeys into my Stream Deck with Companion so that I can just do that all from one place instead of having to click two different things, one with each hand. But that's how the show kind of runs right now until my new vMix machine gets finished built. I just picked up a new video card, so.
Nice, you finally found one, huh?
No, I ended up buying a 2060 just to 2060. A 2070 Super, just to get me rolling, because I bought it off of Nat, who isn't here tonight, but he managed to get a 3070.
Yeah, I was letting you guys know that the vMix isn't going to be able to take advantage of that card yet. But obviously, if you guys are getting into any type of huge work over in 3D, or if you're going to be playing with the Unreal Engine or any kind of light tracing or anything like that, then you're going to probably want to be using it anyway.
Now, what are you doing with your captioning there? Hold on, what's going on with your captioning?
You just caught that?
Let's talk about that for a second.
We've been testing this because it's a site known as Webcaptioner.com.
Okay.
It's actually, I could do it. Let me just do a quick screen share so you can actually see the app itself. This is the window that I'm overlaying onto my content right at the moment.
Let me switch that for the.
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
Oh,
actually, I'm going to spotlight you in a main. Yep. Okay. Great.
So in this sense, it's an app that's been around for a while, and it does connect to Zoom, vMix, Dropbox, OBS, and has webhooks for others if you want to build them. But the whole idea behind this process is to either have manually typed captions or have it use the engine available to it through the API. Now you can connect Zoom with this. If you have the closed captioning feature turned on, you simply come over and grab the API key from Zoom and drop it here as the API token, I should say, and you have a choice. It can either come in as 2 full lines are transcribed first before it puts it on the screen, or it just sends it as soon as possible and does a correction process as it moves along, which is, it can be detrimental either way. We've seen both work and both fail. You can change a lot of the aspects of the way it looks, along with uppercase, first letter of each word, green background rather than black background if you wanted to, or throw shadows under your text. And then it can take on word replacements if you need it to, and actually cover, I believe, wordy dirts as well. If you go in somewhere in here, you can turn off any access to, where is it? I think it's right in here. Yeah, right here, censor profane language. So you can turn that on as well. Basically, it reads whatever audio device you're pumping signal into. So as you can see here, it says it's too quiet. But what's really happening is I'm pumping all the audio from the channel that's being picked up here in Zoom. You don't see my video or audio going across it because I wasn't collecting my video or audio. I could go ahead and turn it on and force it in. But in my case, I just want to pick up what's going on in the feed so that if I say something as a TD, it doesn't show up in the text. This way I can just continue to apply this as either one of two things, the window itself, or inside vMix, it actually allows you, they have a template in XML where you simply add an input as a title, and that title is simply a Webcaptioner title frame that draws the text in for you underneath. And that's what has to be connected to the API. But you could use it either way. And we found in Zoom, it's not really accurate. We've had a tough time with it being accurate for some reason. We're not sure why. It's just one of those things. It seems to run better off the website itself than if you were to stream it in. Oops, I got an overlay there. Sorry. Any other way. So what I like to do is just kind of use the browser window and change it to a green screen and then green that out and let it lay on top. So what you see is just you guys talking, not me. That's the only time it comes up. But it works pretty well. And there are several others out there that have API connections to Zoom, not to vMix per se, but to Zoom. And then when this is finished, you get a transcription of everything that was said. It gets Dropbox or Google Drives, whichever way you want to do it, or you just save the text file. And that can be used as closed captioning, cleaned up and then put over top as a VTT file or something on YouTube if you needed to. It seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, I've used it a little bit too, and it's not as nearly as sophisticated, obviously, as like Google's new thing they're using. It doesn't tell you who's talking, for example. It can't
No,
distinguish
it
between
doesn't.
talkers. But hey, for just like a down and dirty tool, though, it's good. A captioning tool, it's good.
What we heard was the best and most accurate tool out there is actually PowerPoint Presenter. There's a feature set that's no longer available as a download, but that is supposed to be the most accurate and cleanest representation of closed captioning available right now.
So it's interesting you say that. Omar, if you want to talk about it,
because I'm going over there.
We saw.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, why don't you tell that? Because we were both pretty excited about it, but I think we're even a little more so than I was.
All right, so the beginning of the year PowerPoint, if you pay for the full version, the pro grade version, I don't think the family one has it. If you pay for that version and you go to review on the all the way right hand side, and you can literally Google this, go to PowerPoint Captioner on Google, and it's like the first page always pops up. You can add an AI captioner, detects I think it's 6 languages, and it'll translate to pretty much all 60 languages that are in there. So there's like English, French, German, Italian, and one other one I think it was as the native speaking language, and it'll translate to almost any other language within PowerPoint. And the way that Adami had seen it, and I want to say, Mike Lesbron, when you were there as well with us. So the way we had seen it was someone had brought it into a PowerPoint, created their look into PowerPoint that way. Did a screenshot of the PowerPoint, and then had a gray box out like maybe in this corner here for their iMac. So they did a overlay in OBS as that, which looked very similar to vMix. But what they did is they turned it on, and as they were speaking, it captioned live. The difference would be that Leland's here has a transparent background. It comes in. This one has a black background. It's in PowerPoint, but it was very clear. It's very accurate. Similar to this though, which I think. I'm sorry. Similar to this, where it doesn't say who's talking. It just auto-populates that information. So because it's an AI system, it just goes to whatever's talking. So if you have a panelist or multiple people talking back and forth, all of the words are just going to come in, together as one. It doesn't distinguish who's and who.
Right.
But
that
it's
was,
still a down
that
and
was
dirty
Vince Donovan in the Zoom kitchen,
Right.
Zoom test kitchen. We saw that a couple weeks ago. He does. I mean, he operates his live streams with OBS. He's a trainer. He does a lot of different types of training, and he uses PowerPoint. So he'll, instead of creating a ton of graphics, what he does is he creates his PowerPoints and then captures his camera over top of it, and just he'll build a box to lay his image in. So he's already in the PowerPoint environment, and as he changes scenes, it changes his slides. It's really slick how he's doing it. And then he was showing us the PowerPoint Captioner, and he had it on a different language, and we're like, well, how accurate is it? And what is it? How fast is it working? So then we just changed it to English, and we were able to see how fast and accurate it was, and it was pretty impressive. But again, like you're saying, Leland and Omar, you pointed out, it doesn't distinguish who's talking, so it just comes as one real long line of text. If you're having a back and forth conversation, but still, it was pretty slick for everyone has PowerPoint kind of thing.
And it looked super clean. I mean, the way he was doing it, it looked really, really clean. He had a very good layout. Literally, like where my hand is was like his video box, and then where my hand is here was like the content he had, whatever that was, and then just below it was his captioning, and it looked super clean and smooth. And as he transitioned from slide to slide, everything that was already pre-built for this one iMac shot essentially, or picture in picture, this PIP, the captioning just kind of, it was just clean and it went through. Honestly, I agree. I think it's a great tool to use if done correctly. I don't know, DJ, I know we were talking. Did you guys try it out?
No, not yet.
I know we talked about it. You guys did like
my
a
free
demo
time.
Temi
Yeah,
has one
no,
as well.
it works really good for sure. Like you said, you would just kind of picture it over in vMix.
From all the research I did, it's the most accurate so far. Temi and Webcaptioner are actually a close second or third, but they're just not. They're never that accurate. They can't guarantee more than 80% accuracy right now on Webcaptioner. So you gotta just hope for the best. Guys, I'm gonna bail. My wife's already gone to bed. It's Eastern Coast over here, and I got a few things to do. But I appreciate all of you who come to this maybe educate. You guys are doing a great job over here, and I'll be back some more. Just I may need some A1s, maybe a couple of TDs for this. It's the National Opiate Leadership Summit taking place December 8th and 9th. We've got 60 speakers involved across the nation, including the Secretary General of the United States, probably General Guerrero, and several other big names like Mackenzie Phillips and such. So I might be reaching out to some of you guys and see who's available. We may need a few guys just to jump in and help us run some graphics and sound on Zoom. So we'll let you know.
Yeah, well, let us know. And if me and Omar or anybody can help you find you the right people, we absolutely will. So,
and then we can get Andrew on board and he can remote us all in.
Yeah.
Right,
just control everybody from home.
Have a great night. Everybody stay safe.
See you, Leland. Thank you.
Drink a lot, I guess is the best way to do that, right? It's not only detoxifying, but it's also humbling.
Great. So Omar, I think we had just only a couple other questions. Michael asked another question earlier on the Facebook side. He's looking for a solution for remotely powering up and controlling a physical desktop. His roommate is tired of powering up his home setup to run Parsec for him. So this might be a Jeff question.
I know the answer. I do know the answer. All right. If you don't want to have just kids as a first launch choice, because they actually cost way more than this expensive power strip, but there are IP controlled power strips. And they're very much used in server closets and large data centers, even some of the newer UPSs. But you'd probably be just Google IP controlled power strip. And then you have to go into your BIOS on your computer, though, and set it to resume. It depends on the BIOS, but most of the time there's either upon power, resume last state, or upon power, don't do anything. It's usually like 1 or 2, 3 choices. Play with one of those choices. You'll figure it out that whenever you just unplug it, put power back to it, boom, it starts up. I've had a couple servers that we purchased that came that way. And it was very irritating because as soon as you plugged them in, they turned on. But that was a great solution. Whenever we had a remote type setup and it was the same situation, instead of having to ask the janitor to go in and turn it on at the school, we could actually just dial in. And this was, gosh, probably 15 years ago now. It was actually turning on a TriCaster at the time. So it was good times though. And when it worked, it was great. Now, if they don't have internet, well, you got to have more kids.
Yeah, the theater I worked at, the UPSs were all networked, and that's how you could turn on individual power outlets, and it was sequenced. So that was one way that they remoted in if we needed to do something offsite.
I like to use Wake on LAN. I don't know if you guys have done that, so that you can power up your computer remotely just over the internet.
Yeah, I'm a big user of Wake on LAN. You just got to make sure you manage your system that you want to remotely power up, and make sure you don't fully shut it down. You'll only resume from sleep or hibernate states typically.
It's easier on a Mac, but it's on a PC. You just got to make sure your network settings are correct. And once it works, it's super handy.
Yeah, I like that it's easier on a Mac too.
While we have Jeff answering questions, we had a question that came in on the Zoom side.
Wait, did Deja have her? I saw your hand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I did. But we can go to questions. I was just wondering if anyone has the oddball request to do like social media feeds scrolling along the bottom while we're kind of talking about this stuff.
Yes, I've had the request. Oh, you mean but as a ticker, like people are hashtagging stuff, and you're getting those brought in?
Like, yeah, as people are tweeting and whatnot, it gets populated as like a scrolling.
So there's 3. Oh man, it's been a while. So there's 3 main web pages that they kind of do that, where you can say whatever. If you're doing it on YouTube, you can drag those into vMix. Actually, there's a plugin for it, vMix Social. I don't remember the exact way to do it in YouTube, but there's a way to do it in YouTube. And then there's I'd have to get to you offline about it. There's 3 different programs or web pages you can go to that'll help you do that. You just put in whatever the whatever it's called, and it'll say approve or no. Everything Brent knows what I'm talking about. You can approve or not approve something, and it'll go to like a wall page or whatever. And you can design it to do either the wall or a ticker or a banner or a scrolling thing. I can't remember the name right now. I just remind me offline, and I'll get you it, because there's 3 main ones that you can do that with. And then so there's back to Ed. Sorry, for the Q&A portion. I'm going to butcher this name, so I'm not even going to try. But if you can re-ask that question, because I don't understand how to ask that to the audience, unless Ed gets it.
Yeah, sorry. So he had asked that in our Q&A, and somebody commented, so it got moved over.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, that's what happened. So Jeff, it's for Jeff, and I sent Jeff the text of it so he can read it.
Gotcha.
It is he has a requirement where he needs to bring in vMix calls from 2 different PC to a main vMix machine with NDI. Can he use a 1 gig network and get away with it? So it looks like he needs, the follow-up to that was he needs basically 16 vMix callers. So he's looking at 8 NDI streams per PC. So it's going to be two PCs, 8 NDI streams.
It looks like
each 16 NDI streams total.
So he's basically using the NDI ISOs out instead of mixing it down with vMix, it looks like. So if that's the case, then that's going to saturate a 1 gig connection. Yep. So
he's going to have to go 10 gig, no question, with that number of ISOs.
Or you're going to need to either have a larger, I mean, if you've got a desktop or a rack mount that you can put a 10 gig in it, just put a 10 gig card in it, you will never regret that. But if you want to try, when you did see I saw the text about doing a 2.5, it's close. You can almost get over that, but 10 gig would definitely be the better route to go. And a 10 gig and a proper 10 gig switch and a proper set of cables that are 10 gig rated also.
Now, I try to look at as many the Facebook groups as I can. And I believe I saw this talked about earlier today, and someone had suggested in that thread, what if you were just doing, instead of 3 machines, having 1 machine taking in your 8 vMix callers, and then you're taking from a second machine the other 8 vMix callers to get that bandwidth down. So you're not doing 16 NDI streams, you're only doing 8.
But you are doing 6. If you're sending them to if you're taking these, say if you have, just go with 5 and 5. So if you have these 5 and you're sending 5 into 1 machine, that's 10 going into that 1 machine. Unless you were doing a composite. So if you did say if you had 5 and you did a 5 box here and a 5 box here, then you send out 1 feed in, then you're only having 2 NDI streams at that point. But so it depends on the workflow. But if it is trying to do full 16 and have 16 NDI streams, you need more bandwidth for sure.
I think what I was saying is if instead of having 2, so the machine that's cutting the show is taking the 8 vMix callers in, because then they wouldn't be NDI streams. They would be.
No, you would be taking NDI out of those other machines. So they're vMix called in, so it's WebRTC at that point. Then that machine is going to flip it over, or you could be, all depending on how many you need to have in the final machine. If you need to have just 2, that's what I was saying, you're taking a program off of 1 of those, or even 2 or 4 off of each one of them. That's different because you have four outputs, right, on vMix Pro, I think. So you could have 4 and 4, you could do 8, and you're still at just the level, because 6 is realistic, 8 is not.
Oh, well, he clarified too. He has 2 more vMix callers on the main vMix machine. So that,
yeah. Or now if he was doing a vMix call to those machines, and that's nothing. That's like literally nothing, because it's very, very low bandwidth in comparison, if it works the way it's supposed to.
Got it. Well, that's why we ask you, because you know all this stuff. And by the way, you're coming back to AV Tech Talks on what? Yeah. We have you here on the 23rd, I think, right?
Yeah. I'm actually up in Detroit for a show, and that's why I'm in the black dungeon right now. It was either this to go sit in the hotel room, and I've sat here already 12 hours, so I might as well sit here another 3. So why not?
Thank you. We appreciate that.
I know it's been fun, guys. It's been
We
fun.
absolutely do. Great.
No,
Cool.
I've actually been working on a big project at the same time with a client. We built out a cloud setup with vMix. So I've been talking vMix and running on vMix for the last 4 days, and I'm just had enough of vMix. I'm ready to move on. It has been challenging to say the least. It's a lot of moving parts with a lot of different remote callers, and it's the same thing. It's a cluster of vMixes, and when I say cluster, I mean it just seems that way.
So let's see. I think we covered the questions I had in the queue. Do we have any other stuff from the panel that we could talk about? Who haven't we heard from tonight?
So has anybody, going back to the integrating hashtags and social media, has anybody used vMix Social with any success in that?
I have a client that's used it very successfully for business, more or less business communication type, not really the social, but they were using it to bring in tweets and such. And he did a fantastic job with it. It seems to be a very good workflow. I helped him just get his cloud built out for that. And so that was my exposure to it. For our purposes, we use CharacterWorks actually. So it's a much more expensive software, but it's like $2,500 US, but it's a character generator. So it has a lot more controls, and it gives you a better, to me, it gives me a much more control and a better look of what I can end up with. And with a couple channels of NDI out on it, it just works really well for us in our applications.
Yeah, and I've only used it for YouTube for commenting and Facebook for commenting. On 2 different clients, nothing really super intensive, and then and that was pretty easy because it gives you all these options, and you just put it however you want to, and as the comments come in, they just scroll in and do whatever they want. Or you can make it look like StreamYard or Restream, where like pops out in the lower third and shows the little thing over here. If the person doesn't show up though, it shows a little vMix icon. So it was like hit or miss. Besides those 2 scenarios, I haven't done it since. So. But it was plug and play, honestly. As long as you have an account, you go to vMix Social, open it up, connect the account you want to connect, and then it gives you the templates, and you just run with it.
Great. Anybody else on the panel have anything they'd like to?
Yeah, this might be for Jeff. Does NDI over the cloud? What are its audio specifications? Is it a good tool for that?
You could only do 64 channels. If
only 64.
No, actually, there's no limit. It's way up there. The spec for NDI, there's no limit, but it depends on the software between the origin and the destination, what those 2 softwares can do. Because some software can only see the first 2 channels, like BirdDog, for instance, only sees the first 2 channels, whereas other software like Sienna Processing Engine can see 8 channels or now 16 channels, and then you can map it in and out. But by the way, like the TriCaster or the Vector Plus that are in the cloud, it sees 8 channels in and out. So both of those are, but yes, multiple channels for sure.
So conceivably, if you've got presenters spread around the country, and they have NDI cameras that are feeding into the cloud, you can pull their audio as well from that as well.
Well, it's an embedded audio, and that it's the same as if you had. So you take the SDI and go into a computer, and then at that point you're encoding it, and you're encoding and sending it out. So it's like a stream. So yes, but to bring full rate SDI, you have to have tremendous amount of bandwidth. And reliable, because the jitter and the latency becomes a factor that you have to work on. And so most of the time, there's 3 choices out there now, and we're kind of getting ahead of our 2 or 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now. But it's stuff I love talking about. So there's 3 versions. There's Sienna, who does NDI Cloud. And so what it is about backhaul between point A and point B, or point A and B and C, depending on where you put the nodes. And then there is also the guys at MediaLux, which what they do is they convert it over to either an H.264, well, WebRTC, H.264, or H.265 in SRT on the last two. And so that's their backhaul is SRT for the most part. And then they convert it back to NDI on the local place. Or if you're in the cloud, you convert it back. And then once it's in the cloud, it's there. The number three would be the Bird Dog Cloud, which is a very similar as what MediaLux is. It's converting it to SRT and then converting it back into NDI on the cloud. Now, that all depends on what your use case scenario is. MediaLux has the best price point for MediaLux and Bird Dog Cloud, or it's MediaLux first for price point, then the because you could do like a web presenter type thing where you give them a link and they sign in, and then it comes back to you in the cloud, or on premise, either way. The Sienna stuff is more about backhaul, big backhaul. So like 8, 10, 12, 16. I've done as many as 20 channels between two places, two locations. So it's about it uses a lot heavier hardware in some ways because it's more CPU based. It runs on Ubuntu, or it and then the MediaLux and also the other one, the Bird Dog Cloud, run on PC. So it depends, and they use the GPU a little bit more. So it depends on your application and what your hardware is.
Do you have to use Bird Dog's cameras to use their service? Or?
We've actually installed several of their cameras, waiting on a few more 4Ks for a church actually right now, and they're good cameras. They're definitely good cameras. Their P200 is a little challenging right now. The P100 is what most people are finding really good success with, and it's the cheapest version of their cameras, or the less expensive version of the cheapest. The motors are good. The 200 is a little bit better. It is a good PTZ for a $2,500, $3,000 PTZ. The 4K P4K is the one I'm waiting on right now for a client, and they're looking really good. The motors I think are a little bit better. They're a little on par with that mid level. Their top dog, the P400, is definitely a really good camera. For the price point, it is pretty close to that. My favorite, Panasonic's UE150. As a matter of fact, I've got some down at a job down headed your way, Omar. That job I was telling you about in Orlando, we're going to be using a couple out there for it. That is a fantastic camera. It's 10 grand, but it's a fantastic camera. The motion on it is just amazing. Panasonic really did it well.
So yeah, just to add to Jeff's, the Panasonics I installed in a church. I mean, not a church. I'm sorry, in Key West in a cooking class. 4 of them. Those cameras are fantastic. They look really good. They're really smooth. They're clean. The robos in them are great. The lenses are great. The PTZ 200, I just did an install with a church, and like you're saying, ran into some problems with them. Ended up having to call technical support. I found out that since we're doing PoE over them, PoE plus over them to get the net power and send everything through. What I wasn't aware of is that we were using the controller box, and because we left them on for so long without the controller plugged in directly, for whatever reason, they wanted to see a managed network and they wanted to do HTTP. The PT200s will change from DHCP to static if they're on too long and they don't see a DHCP source.
Yes.
They'll just change over to static, and you got to turn them. You got to unplug the power, let them shut down, plug them back in, and then they'll turn on and they'll default to DHCP. And it's the only way to get them to talk to each other with the controller, which was like nowhere to be found until this guy called me. I was like, oh, that makes total sense actually. So
actually, there's a lot. They do it. All the Bird Dog stuff will do that. For pretty much if it's looking for a DHCP server and doesn't see it, the Sparks will do that for New Tech also. It's a pretty good thing because like just today I was troubleshooting one of my teams was in Cary, and they're like, we can't see the spark. I looked on my list of all my DHCP server and said, oh, well, there it is. 192.168, 100, 100. That's the magic number. I knew exactly what it was. They didn't remember that, but I knew exactly, dialed into it, told it to go to a static IP address, which by the way, we talked about this, I think in the past, Andrew and I differ a little bit on the Dante world. I believe, I think he's coming from another feather, but I like to lock all my devices down and I put a sticker on them and I know what IP address it is because I know if I can't see that IP address when I type in ping space that IP address, it doesn't exist. But I don't have to wander around. But DHCP and the cameras, again, going back to what Omar was saying, if you're not an IT person and have the tools in your hands to be able to find all those IP addresses, it could be very frustrating, especially whenever they're trying to make it simple for everybody. But in essence, it makes it more complicated because if you didn't know what that address was that it defaulted to, but here's the kicker: if you have 3 cameras or 6 cameras that are all bird dog, and you don't get a DHCP server for all of them, guess what address they all go to? Then you're talking about a mess. And so you have to unplug each one of them or all of them and then go one at a time and reassign and reset. So even when we get in rental cameras, that's our process. It's like you set it on the bench, set it to an IP address, put a piece of tape on the back, write it on the back of it. That's
And just to add
normal.
another curveball into this, if you do PTZ optics, they're the opposite. They come static IP addresses in the cameras, and the controllers have to be changed to static in order to talk to the cameras.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pain in the ass.
That's really annoying behavior. The RFC standard behavior for devices that are DHCP, when they don't get an address, is they should adopt a pseudo-random address out of 169.0.254.0/24. But these manufacturers don't really seem to understand that, and so instead they do stuff like they'll put a static default in there, and like Jeff said, you run it with duplicate IP addresses on your network. For a non-specialist to try to troubleshoot that's a real pain. I wish they would do the correct industry standard behavior.
Well, I mean, the good news is at least for me, and maybe I don't know if it's a standard, but I always use the NDI NDI monitor.
Studio monitor.
Studio monitor.
Yeah.
Thank you. I knew I was missing it. The NDI studio monitor, you just plug that in, go look for it, and it finds all those, and you just click it on, and then hopefully you can at least see your OBS. You can see your on display menus and kind of troubleshoot from that if they have access to that. So like that, for me, that's always the first step. Like get them on the network, get them on, turn NDI on, and if I could see them, then okay, they're on, they got power. If I'm using a separate controller for the signal flow, then I'll make sure they're saying signal. And then the last thing I should do is I connect it on the controller, because now I know that they're on, they're working, everything going. The 2 problems I run into the most is when doing PoE stuff is that either they get a PoE and not a PoE plus or a PoE plus plus to control them, or 2, they get an unmanaged network and then they're like, hey, I can't find anything. It's like, well, this one piece here that you're plugging into is your choke point. So go buy this, bring it back, or I'll go right now and buy it, reimburse me, and we'll plug this in. And usually that solves all my problems.
One tool that I found that has just been a godsend. If you don't have access, like if you're on a different network and you don't know the IP addresses, Angry IP Scanner. It's available on the PC. I'm not sure if it is on the Mac, but that little piece of software has saved our bacon so many times because you can set it in a range, scan the whole thing. There's like I have them on my phone too. Fing, I think was one I've had on my phone for years, but you have to be on the wireless with that. But Angry IP, we run that on our local network on a PC. We can see everything that's on our network, and especially if we're having to like where I'm at right now, I'm on somebody else's network with somebody else's DHCP server, not by choice, but I am. So I didn't know what a couple of my encoders that booted up that are hardware based. I didn't know what IP address they would pull. So I just ran Angry IP Scanner and like, oh, there you are. And that is some great tools to have in your hands, especially when you're troubleshooting cameras.
Yeah, another free tool that you can use is called Nmap, Nmap. That's kind of the industry standard scanner. And you can even, like if you have something like you're trying to find, I don't know, a device running Companion, for example. Companion listens, I believe, if I remember correctly, on TCP, I want to say 3000 by default. And so you can actually tell it what TCP port to scan for, and it'll find the devices, or if you're looking for something running SSH. So Nmap is also a very useful tool.
Roland, I think we're going to get along really good.
Great. Well, Jeff, I don't want you to give everything away before you come back on the 23rd.
Oh, we've got plenty. Don't worry. We haven't really talked about the cloud yet.
Oh, I know. But I think from our panel, I think Nina had something she was going to bring up. Nina, do you still have a question for us?
for the last 2 minutes.
Well, we may run a little over because we had our technical problems, but I definitely want to get to your question. There might be a couple we don't get to. I see on the Zoom side, so maybe Jeff, if you look in the Zoom questions, you can answer. Randy had a couple. It looks like some people might have answered those, but there were a couple NDI questions. He had a camera question, so if you guys, we'll take a look at those for you, Randy. But go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, so something as I'm listening to everyone with the breadth of experience is I'm someone who's a recent graduate and just wanting to know how one would get the experience to know and learn all of these various apps and technology, especially because I can't, invest in many of the rigs that all of you are describing. I've done the thing, I've read the John Huntington book, I've been experimenting with OBS. I have vMix open to download to start experimenting with that, but I work with things like Pro Tools and Ableton, and for me personally, my basis is in lighting and audio, and so learning as we're in this new world order of virtual, where it's also now trying to learn video at the same time, but also not necessarily having the ability to connect with a place that will pay for me to do that. So I just want to see what everyone has to say about that.
Yeah, I'll go first on that one. So you're already doing the right thing. You got programs you're playing with, you're learning. Personally, and again, if anybody has anybody different, let me know. Master those programs you're using, because a lot of the times, and this is in my experience as a video guy, a lot of these things translate over to the same thing. So like, get a strong core fundamental knowledge of a program, and I guarantee you'll go to another program that does something similar, and the verbiage might be different, the layout might be different, but it still fundamentally does the same things. So if you get a strong core, like for example, I always, when I teach switcher classes, I always go over like these fundamentals that I've learned. Like, hey, this preview program, every switcher has this, the ME1, ME2, every switcher has this functionality. The buses, like auxes, they all have these things. It's like, where are they? How do I get them? Are they in the menus? Or is there a button push? And usually for me, skimming through the manuals, because so back in the day, I was in a Barco house. So I knew Barco projectors, Barco switchers, all these Barco products, Screen Pros, everything. I was Barco all the way. But because I had to learn to master those pieces of gear very, very well, the ins and outs, and like learn things to do with them to make them work, every other switcher since then has built on that fundamental knowledge I gained from those products, those projectors, those switchers, those cameras that I use, the Sony RSP150 shaders. Like I took a class in those. I mastered those. I did it for like 2 years, nothing but shading. Now when I go to any switcher, grass or whatever, it's like, okay, I need to do XYZ because I know these are the processes to do. Where are they in this switch? And it just takes me, a quick scan of the manual saying, this is where this is, this is where that is, this is whatever it is. Like for me, when I switched over to the whole vMix world, it wasn't very hard for me to switch from running a media server, running a switcher to go into vMix, because it still has inputs. It's a preview program. It still has the fading on the side. It still has my counters. It's actually very similar. It's just all virtual. So like for me, the thing getting used to was the virtual side of this and interacting with a keyboard and an APC 40 and the mouse instead of an actual console that had ME1, ME2, and just kind of. Also, another thing I have to think about too is the way I got to certain parts of it. So like, a chroma and keying is slightly different in vMix, but it does the same thing essentially if I have the right stuff in place. The ME1, ME2 functions, not really a thing with vMix, but vMix has they just came out with this for an added input, so I can kind of do some stuff like that and add a pips inside of it without creating it. And they have their own version of that, so that's like something that I'm used to. Instead of hitting MIDI player 1 like in the Black Magics, or my logo in like a Screen Pro 2 or an Image Pro, vMix, you just put a logo in there and you just hit the input and you go live with it, or you make it a layer in a shortcut key. So like I'm still doing all the same things I do with a switcher, but where I'm getting to that point and how I get to that next step that's the only thing that's changed. And it's just more menu driven than it is physical. So for you, do what you're doing right now. Get the vMix, stay on OBS, master those things. I mean, Chris and me are working on a project now where because I use vMix a lot, he uses OBS a lot. We were to cross each other between the two, because they literally do almost the same thing minus the calling, which there is a way with OBS to do it. It's a little more complicated, but there is a way with OBS to do calls, right? It's not an OBS product, but it's a third-party plugin. So there's a lot of fundamental cross-throughs that you can see. And just from me knowing what I know about OBS and knowing vMix, I was able to say, okay, well, when you're doing scenes, right, that's like an input. And then when you the next thing over, you're doing your playlist. That's like doing your all your inputs are coming in here. But instead of doing these multiple steps here, it's all here and it comes through. You know, the same thing when you're in a studio mode in OBS. It's the same thing in vMix. You know, there's a preview, there's a program, in studio mode. It's the same thing. OBS also has a multi-viewer functionality, which is in the menus. For vMix, it's in the menus as well, but it's, you know, on the top middle, you hit the arrow thing, output 2, turn it to multi-viewer. The functions are the same, you know. So it's just figuring out where in the menu were these functions or these attributes that I wanted it. So if I'm not an audio guy, so I'm sure maybe Ed or Andy might have a better grasp of how to do that crossover. But for video, a switcher is a switcher is a switcher. Yes, there's different qualities about them. There's different pros and cons about them. There's different delays, different functions, but the fundamentals of a switcher are the same. You know, TriCaster, when I looked at a TriCaster, was super confusing. As soon as I saw the switcher with a TriCaster, I was like, oh, this makes total sense now, because I'm used to seeing that layout. I was confused by the GUI system, even though it had all the same stuff, but because it wasn't laid out how my brain used to see it, or was used to seeing it, I was confused by it. As soon as my buddy showed me the switcher for it, I was like, oh, I totally get this, dude. Here, I got you. And I programmed the whole thing. It was, you know, it went from, I kind of know what I'm looking at, but not really. I don't know how to get these places, to, oh, well, what about if I give you the controller? Oh, dude, what do you need me to do? Boom, 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 boom. I was hitting buttons. I was there. So master those programs you're using right now, the fundamentals of them, because it'll cross over across the board to everything else you're doing is the main thing I keep iterating.
There's a guy on who does a lot of stuff on YouTube. His name is Curtis Judd, Judd. He's a professional audio engineer with a focus on videography. He has his own channel. He has Curtis Judd Audio. He does a lot of free stuff. He does a lot of Q&A. He also has a lot of courseware that's really good too, using different aspects of hardware and software to do audio engineering with a focus on videography. So I would recommend Curtis Judd, Judd, as well on YouTube.
I'm going to say the geek route now, because you're young, Nina, and you could probably really use this and you'll probably run with it. Get certified with Dante, first and foremost. Dante 1, 2, and 3, all 3 levels. It is a great backbone for IT. And then spend the money, get NDI certified. There's other free ones, but get NDI certified. You're preparing yourself for the future. You're going to have a base that very, very few people will have. And especially at your age, it'll give you a big starting point. Third thing, pack your bag. Meet me in Orlando in about 7 days. It's time to go to work.
To follow up on what Jeff's saying, yes, audio and video over IP, absolutely. Start learning the aspects of SMPTE 2110. That's going to be the next big thing. NDI is kind of the stopgap. I know that's probably, I'm waiting for Jeff's reaction to that, but
2110 is great if you have a ton of money.
No, right,
fantastic.
Right. Yes, yeah.
As long as you use one manufacturer and you don't mind just sticking with that one manufacturer. Yeah, right. That's great.
But right now, definitely the Dante, NDI. I really thought Omar was going to say that you're doing the right thing first by being here on AV Tech Talks and paying attention to the AV Educate page, because there's a ton of free resources there for you. There's so many free resources on the web right now. During this pandemic, a lot of manufacturers really stepped up, so you can see as many webinars as you want that are VOD. But as Omar said, yeah, learn those things that you're learning now. The other thing is, right now, you're part of a panel with about 11 people, and start tapping into your network. And I'll even offer, because geographically we're in the same area, hit me up and say, hey, Ed, is there somewhere like a shop that you for a company I work for, that we can go and play with this piece of gear? And I'll call that shop and I'll say, hey, got anything going on? And they will obviously be telling me no. If anyone tells me they have something going on, I'm going to say, well, why aren't I on that show? But when they tell me no, I'll say, hey, can I bring a colleague of mine in to play with this switcher, or this audio console or this. And everybody's got a lot of gear sitting around right now. So anybody who's listening, that's what you should be doing. Go reach out to your contacts and say, hey, I'd love to come down to the shop and play with X, Y, or Z and to brush up my skills. And they're going to appreciate that too. And if you're staying sharp when things do start trickling in, you're going to be someone they're going to call because you're on their mind and they saw your face during this time. So reach out to me or anybody you know, see if you can get some time on some of the gear that you want to learn. But I think you're already on the right path with the software you were talking about, vMix, OBS, those things right now, because we're living in a virtual world. Really learn Zoom. I'm spending a lot of time on Facebook, actually answering a lot of people's questions on these Zoom forums, because I spend a lot of time on Zoom, and I'm able to help some people. So, right, Zoom, everybody's using it because it's so easy, and everybody's really exposed to it. I just did a whole conference with Zoom that I finished up today. So that's what a lot of people are using. If they're not using vMix Call or something like that, also learn Teams, learn Blue Jeans. They are so much not as fun as Zoom, but learn them anyway because some people are using them. But yeah, that would be my advice. Does anybody else on the panel have something for Nina? How to?
One quick thing with with whatever programs you focus in on that you learn, try and shadow people that are using them to learn their workflow. It's interesting. For live events, there are not a lot of different types of workflows. There's a few that are tried and true. And in the virtual world, I'm seeing a lot of different things. There's just so many tools, and we're still shaking all that out. But however you do it, I mean, it seems to me that if you can get on site somewhere, that's great. Like I would jump in a heartbeat for Jeff's invitation there, getting on the plane. That's probably gold right there, especially if he pays you. I don't know if he's going to do that, but there's that. And then the other thing is, if you can do it virtually, that's the trick. It's like, can you get on a show where you're just in the background, you're a fly on the wall, you're watching one person do their work, and they allow you to do that? Because you can learn the ins and outs of any program, but it doesn't teach you how someone is really using that on site in the trenches and what the best practices are. It's all about best practices. So that's my 2 cents.
One other thing, if I could piggyback on what Jeff was saying, you really need to understand the fundamentals of network engineering. You don't need to understand like BGP and MPLS and OSPF and stuff like that, but understanding basically how TCP/IP works, understanding the DNS, being able to troubleshoot problems on a local area network, understanding things like latency across the internet and those kinds of things, that will then give you a great fundamental background to do stuff like the Dante and to really be able to operate effectively in any kind of environment with digital stuff going on.
Well, I'll just add my 2 cents. One of the things we spoke about this on the Zoom Kitchen a couple of weeks ago, and I called it analysis by exposure. Be really careful of analysis by exposure, because what happens is as you're going through all this stuff, somebody's going to say, well, you should check out this, or you should check out vMix, or you should check out whatever it is. Figure out what it is that you want to do, find the best tools, for that particular thing. Basically pick a lane and stick to it, because until you've kind of transcended out of that piece of software or out of that piece of gear or whatever, and it doesn't meet your needs anymore. But it's so easy to get caught up in just, constantly being exposed by new YouTube videos. And every time you open up your email, you're getting like 30 emails about new pieces of gear. It's so easy to get caught up in that. Pick a couple of things, as the other folks have said, and really master them. And then when we hopefully next April or May get to the point where we're all back to work again. I mean, I'm more in the concert business, so I'm it has not been good for us, and that's why I'm trying to pivot into more of the world that you guys are in. But when we do get to that point where there's lots of gigs, just get around folks, you know, like Andy was saying, just get around folks that are doing it, and, you know, be a good hang, be the person that's willing to go get the coffee, be the person that is, you know, just a decent, you know, jump in and fix whatever needs fixing. And your opportunities will come. I've seen it happen so many times that, you know, the guy or girl that's, you know, knows that, has that little skill that nobody else has, all of a sudden, you know, they're working on, you know, some big DVD shoot or big, you know, production shoot that they never had, you know, any idea that it would happen. So get around people that are doing it, and just be a good hang, and be willing to do whatever needs doing, and your opportunities will come.
Was any of that helpful to you, Nina? Did I give you some
12 minutes
some insight?
of advice.
That was super helpful. I definitely was trying to make it more general for like, oh, for people like me, but that was great. I love the specificity. I have many notes now. It's, you know, it's a certain, I've been watching so many webinars, so many seminars, and so it's good to just hear some like more concrete, like beyond the seminar, beyond the webinar, of how to really get to know, meet people. Because I do theater, that's how Ed and I met, and so getting outside of that realm as well, just to meet other people, because I know theater can be very closed, I guess would be a good way to put it.
It's definitely a community, and it's got a very different set of rules. I'll say that. There's and I mean, extremely knowledgeable people. I've seen things in theater where I'm like, that is so ingenious, and then I've seen things in theater where I'm like, how is nobody dead? Just, you know, it's like the circus, you know. Sometimes things are, you know, the artistry is amazing, and then you look, you know, at the rides outside, and you're like, that's held together with chewing gum and a Band-Aid. So it's very interesting.
Legit to me.
Yeah, exactly. But glad that you got some very specific talking. I know on the Facebook, AV Trainer mentioned checking out the local IATSE, which for us is local 1 in our area. I know it's pretty tough to get into local 1 and whatnot, but check that out. Avexia is another one. I never say that right.
Avixa. Oh, now I'm fucked up.
Yeah, I always say it wrong. Used to be Infocom.
Avixa.
Yeah, with their CTS certifications. That's a little pricey and might not necessarily do what you need. It's very specific to what it does, who needs it. But if you want to get into any kind of corporate working in some office conference room, you're going to need it, because every application specifies CTS certification required, even though they have no idea what that is. So,
sorry, I just wanted to add real quick, and this isn't just to you know, because of what I said. All the advice is great. I'm definitely gonna look into the NDI certification, by the way. I didn't know that was a thing, so that's a new thing right now for me. The webinar stuff is great. What we do here at AV Educate is great. The knowledge we share is great. The people we have on here are amazing, beyond amazing. The knowledge that we gain out of this. Ed, Bodie, and me have had these talks numerous times. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because you're gaining practical knowledge and theoretical knowledge and a lot of ways of thinking about stuff. But in live events, particularly, and I'm sure in anything else that we do that involves, you know, these physical worlds, you still don't you don't gain the knowledge of knowing, like going to school is fantastic. You have a lot of theory, a lot of practical knowledge, a lot of good insights into how things work, a lot of the behind the scenes of like the inner out workings of sound and how you can manipulate them and stuff. But knowing, and I say this example all the time, knowing what a fader does and when to use it correctly are two different things, and some of that is from experience. So like playing with the gear and getting the hands-on with it, and like running your own mock shows or going online and seeing what somebody did and recreating the same thing is going to give you that tactile experience, because these talks are great to say, hey, you know what, Jeff said this, or Andy said this, or whatever, or DJ said, I know this does this because I've heard people talk about this, but figuring out how to get to solution is a whole nother ballgame. Like this, like for me, the most interesting thing about all this stuff is signal flow all the time. Like right now, the NDI certification, I know about this. I'm going to hunt where to go find it, right? The angry IP or angry, I learned about it. I looked it up. I'm going to dig into it a little bit. Never used it before. Knowing that it exists and what it's supposed to do and knowing how to use it are two different things. And that's what I'm trying to iterate for anybody watching this right now who's like taking all these notes and doing everything. This is all great, but until you get hands-on experience and like learn how to get these steps, to get to those positions, to get to that, whatever it is you're trying to do, it's a whole nother ballgame. Jeff's sitting in a ballroom right now doing something. He's not there because he knows what NDI does. He's there because he knows what it does. He knows the ins and outs of it. He's played with it. He's experimented with it. He knows that, what it can't do, best things for it, things that don't work for it. He's going to go into a room and say, that's not all right. That's a Cat 5e. That's not going to work out for what we're doing. Get that out of here. Like, he's going to know because he's got the experience and he's seen it and he's done it over and over and over again. Those are things that you get from physically doing stuff and being there and getting the actual hands-on experience and knowing when to do what. Knowing that NDI exists and that it sends video and audio, that's completely different than knowing how to use it properly and what's going on. Like knowing about the CPU, the networks, like Roland was saying, he's talking about network and IP and bit rates and things like that. That's a whole nother level to IP. That's not just downloading the NDI.tools and putting on NDI input and saying, okay, go to the source.
Yeah, start there. If you don't have it, just do it and play with it. But exactly what Omar's saying, I agree completely. I haven't been in the business, the production business, for 35 years now. A big part of it is just using it and creating that muscle memory. I have had to learn things in Ubuntu, and I did not want to know that. I did not want to know, but after setting up several servers and doing it multiple times, it's muscle memory now. Hey, Decent.
Hey, I just wanted to also, I know Nina's already heard 8 million replies. There's even people on Facebook giving some tips. It goes back to attitude. And I think this community is one that has a great attitude. I've heard some people that I work with on a daily basis saying, oh, I don't share my workflow. And it's like, okay, well, how did you even learn what you know to not share it, right? So being open with that knowledge and also just being open to those opportunities. I don't mean you need to get on a flight and go to Orlando, but I feel like a lot has been lost in this new culture. I don't want to play the age game, but there's definitely, a new brand of technician coming on the market that I don't want to share my workflow, or I'm an account manager at our company, and these guys are like, so when are we coming in to do training? It's like, you could just fire up a free Zoom account and play with it, or I share links to come to these kind of places or the Zoom test kitchen, and they don't show up and they just expect to get put on the clock and get signed up for training. And it's like back when I don't want to assume ages here, but when I was, younger, I had to go to school. I had to pay money. I had to work full time, put myself through school. So I had a little piece of paper that says I'm a certified audio engineer. Then I took that little piece of paper and volunteered with people who were, like the people on this panel tonight that knew, and I needed to shadow them and get that knowledge and get that experience. So there's a very different breed coming forward. And I think just keeping that mental state of wanting to be the eternal student and surrounding yourself with people like this community that are going to be open and receptive to sharing their knowledge is going to be for sure the way to go.
Nina is the MVP tonight. You literally got everybody talking.
And the biggest thing to it is going off of what Disa said, and everybody's kind of been saying is about the whole nobody wanted to share their information. It's become a new age where it's like, I don't want to share my signal flow because the thought process was, well, if I'm the one that knows how to do it, I'm valuable. And that's not how it is anymore. Everybody's got to be able to work together and be valuable in their own right and know what they're doing. So that way, you know, like for instance, I'm actually getting on my first show with Omar this week. Omar has assured me that I know the stuff that we're doing, but there's a chance that I might not. I've never worked with it hands on, you know what I mean? Aside from a couple of things we've done here and stuff like that. But knowing this, knowing what you're doing and having somebody teach it to you so everybody can be a valuable product on a show is the best thing that you can possibly do for everybody.
Now, and everything that's been said has been great. And I think it's worth pointing out that Nina just announced the other day that she's going to be starting a podcast for people who are in a similar situation where they've just gotten out of school, don't have the experience, and want to build that experience. So I'm sure most of you on the panel maybe didn't know that. So I think that the advice that was given was very valuable to helping her form some ideas for that podcast. And Nina, I hope you stick with us, of course, and feel free to bring any questions. I'm happy to help. I believe Omar, AV Educate, would be happy to help in any way with that endeavor that you're taking on. And it's really commendable that, even as someone who's just out of school, you're looking at a way to help other people, by spreading a voice and putting content out there that for people who are in the same boat and looking for that direction, that that port in the storm. Because right now it's probably one of the toughest times to have come out of a theater design program or some kind of audio program or video program, and you've come out into a world where all of that has somewhat disappeared while you were finishing your senior year, or maybe you're in school now, and the questioning if this path is the right path. Eventually it's going to come back. Eventually we're going to have live events. Humans just need to have those things. They need to be in tight quarters with other people and sharing an experience. So there's no doubt in my mind that we will get back to doing these in-person events. I'm already working on some hybrid events. There is no doubt in my mind also that in-person events moving forward will have a virtual component to them. I don't see that ever going away now, where it was somewhat of an afterthought before because of the pandemic. It's now the forefront, and seeing the engagement and the reach, I think it's just going to be an add-on that is a standard boilerplate from now on. So learning these skills right now is great. And then, keep the faith that we will get back to seeing other humans in person, maybe with masks, maybe eventually not. Hopefully not, so we can all see each other's faces, not through a computer screen. But that's just my 2 cents on it. But again, very commendable that you're starting your own podcast to help people in a similar situation. Omar, you got something? And then I think we're going to get close to wrapping up because we are running very over time again this week.
That's what I got. So I just wanted to, before we wrap it up, thank you guys for staying the extra time. Thank you everybody on Facebook for staying with us. I know we went a little bit further. This was super powerful. If I had an MVP to give out, Nina, you'd be getting it right now. Here virtually. I don't know where you are on everybody else's screen, but there you go. You could just accept that virtually. Before we close out, though, I'm gonna let Bodie close up. He's got something special he wants to give out to the audience. I'll let him have the final word of the night, essentially. And I hope to see you guys next week. We're gonna do some very cool stuff. Those will be up tomorrow because I'm slammed and we're still going, so I don't have time to make anything.
Well, let's tell them what we have next week real quick.
So next week we're gonna have, if you guys don't know, Nathan Lively from Sound Design is gonna come in and talk about sub-alignment. He's created a program / app that you guys can just download, kind of like I don't want to say like Sound Vision because I don't know exactly because I'm not an audio guy, but similar to that where you plug it in, do some tests, run some things. He's gonna demo out the entire product for us, how to set it up, how to run it, and how to sub-align your subs, the way Nathan Lively does his stuff. That's happening next week, and then Wednesday I have a surprise talk with you. We are still confirming him, so I don't want to give it away, but Austin is texting me now, so I'm hoping as soon as we get stopped that it is good news, and I have a very excited person I want to bring on for Wednesday as well.
Well, remind our audience what happens on Wednesdays.
So sorry. So Wednesdays we do our, and Nina, this is a perfect thing for you. So Wednesdays we do our live podcast, which is a session with me and Austin Jackson. We talk to the individuals who have been on either the show with us here and kind of allow our audience to come back and speak to them on any topic that they've talked about in case you've missed something or you want to touch base on something else, or if you just want to learn more about that particular person, we bring them onto the podcast if they want to come on. We also try to keep that more business and skill set development as far as that goes. So it's not a demo of any kind, but more of an informational share to grow your own knowledge within certain specific things you want to know about from that speaker, or just in general that you want to know about the speaker, maybe how they got to, where they came from to where they are now. The talks we try to keep them around business and growth. So they are just talking formats. They're only an hour. They're from 8 to 9 o'clock. And again, I'm talking too much. So Bodie, please take over before I keep talking and close us out for the night because I need to do other things.
All right. So as most of you know, I'm the streamer in the room. I pew over there on Twitch, twitch.tv/ToxicBioWolf. What I'm bringing to you is I am starting to do, I've turned my channel into more of a charity event channel. So I am now partnered streaming with Extra Life for Kids. What that does is when you donate to the platform, it automatically gives money. It gives money to the local hospital. For me, it's Galisano at Lee Memorial to help with all the things that happen with the kids, whether money for IVs, money for whatever the hospital needs for the kids, it does that. The other thing that I switched over is, I'm sure as most of you know, or anybody that has been a streamer before on Twitch, you can donate to the streamer. Well, I have taken my donations completely out. My donations now, if you donate to me on my stream, it is going to go into a bank. And every time I get enough money to buy a Nintendo Switch, I'm buying it, stacking it behind me, and I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to give it to those kids that are in the hospital for Christmas. Is what I'm going to do. That will be a year-round charity event that goes on. It will never be off my channel. I will never accept another donation off my stream. Personally, it will all go to the kids. Any money that's left over at the end of the year, once we buy the Nintendo Switches, will automatically go to the Extra Life charity organization. So I just want to give you guys if you guys ever want to feel that you want to help me out and doing that charity, again, it's twitch.tv/ToxicBioWolf. I'm live 4 nights a week. Monday after this show, I'm half hour late. Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday, I normally stream. And it's not always pew games. I do play a lot of other games as far as, Among Us, strategy puzzle games, card games, trading card games, and things like that. So I'm not always boring. So with that, we will close out the night. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for hanging out. I couldn't appreciate it as much as any of you guys can for being here. I saw somebody ask what my username was on Twitch again. It is Toxic Biowolf, BIOWOLF. You'll see this emblem when you pull up my stream channel. But that's what I'm here for. I'm here to bring as much as I can to the stream. That's where the goofiness comes into me. And thank you for everybody being here. We'll see you guys next week.